Chapter 241. Meng Sangtian coerces Yi Li with Ziqiong. Isn't it a bit late begging for mercy now? Yi Li said calmly. The three seventh-tier evolved beings were shocked by his words, and at this moment, all they could think about was escaping. Immediately, the three seventh-tier evolved beings began to flee backward as fast as they could. However, Yi Li shook his head slowly. Did these three seventh-tier evolved beings really think they could escape from him? He activated the swift steps and instantly appeared behind the three seventh-tier evolved beings from the Ghost Hand sect. He raised his dragon-slaying blade and swung it. Swish! The three seventh-tier evolved beings were instantly cut in half, and they didn't even know how they died. Haha, Yi Li, you didn't expect this, did you? Meng Kangshan's voice suddenly appeared behind Yi Li. Yi Li turned around slowly, genuinely puzzled about why Meng Sangtian could still laugh. When he turned around, he saw that Meng Sangtian was already in front of Ziqiong, and his hand was gripping her neck. Meng Sangtian was, after all, an 8th-tier evolved being, while all the members of the Apocalypse Legion were only 7th-tier zombies, so there was a considerable power difference. Yi Li, now your woman is in my hands. As long as I twist my hand lightly, your beloved woman will disappear forever, Meng Sangtian said triumphantly, looking at Yi Li. Yi Li's face remained calm like still water. He had already anticipated that Meng Sangtian might resort to holding Ziqiong hostage. Ziqiong's face turned pale with fear, her eyes filled with pleading, clearly indicating that she didn't want to die. Let her go, Yi Li said lightly to Meng Sangtian. Yi Li, do you think you still have the right to say such things at this point? Hand over the dragon-slaying blade, or your beloved woman will die. Meng Sangtian angrily shouted. Yi Li's face remained serene. It's a pity she's not my woman. What are you saying? Meng Sangtian asked coldly, one word at a time. You don't believe me? Yi Li looked at Meng Sangtian. Meng Sangtian hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do. He contemplated for several seconds. Yi Li, don't lie to me. If she's not your woman, it means you don't care if she dies. Meng Sangtian thought that even if he let this woman go, he would still face certain death. If what Yi Li said was true, at least he wouldn't die alone. Thinking this way, Meng Sangtian was prepared to take action. Wait, Yi Li said. As soon as Meng Sangtian heard this, he licked his lips. Since Yi Li spoke at this time, it meant that this woman was truly his woman. In that case, he could exchange Yi Li's woman for the dragon-slaying blade. Even though they were both 8th-tier evolved beings, the gap between him and Yi Li was vast. He thought that the dragon-slaying blade must be the reason for this disparity. Yi Li, do you agree to the exchange? Meng Sangtian stared at Yi Li. All right, Yi Li said after a few seconds of contemplation. With that, Yi Li slowly approached Meng Sangtian. Just a few steps away from Meng Sangtian, he stopped Yi Li. Yi Li, throw the dragon-slaying blade over here and I'll return your beloved woman to you. Meng Sangtian looked greedily at the dragon-slaying blade in Yi Li's hand, believing it was now within his grasp. Without a second thought, Yi Li tossed the dragon-slaying blade over to Meng Sangtian. Meng Sangtian caught it and then pushed Ziqiong towards Yi Li. Chapter 242. The dragon-slaying blade is broken. After receiving the dragon-slaying blade, Meng Sangtian felt like he had obtained a priceless treasure and burst into laughter. Why is it that you men become so foolish when you have a woman? After laughing, Meng Sangtian taunted Yi Li. I don't understand what you mean. Yi Li remained as calm as ever. Meng Sangtian sneered. Yi Li, one assume you have such great strength due to the dragon-slaying blade, don't you? Now that the dragon-slaying blade is in my hands, if one kill you, how far do you think your woman can run? 10 steps, Yi Li said calmly. Meng Sangtian smiled coldly and raised the dragon-slaying blade. Farewell, Yi Li. With that, Meng Sangtian swung the dragon-slaying blade downward. Yi Li, however, didn't make any attempt to dodge. Just as the dragon-slaying blade was about to touch his head, he raised 2 fingers and clamped the blade between them. What? Meng Kangshan's pupils rapidly contracted when he saw this scene. He couldn't believe that the mighty dragon-slaying blade, one of the 10 great divine weapons, could be held between 2 fingers. But before Meng Sangtian could react, the next moment was even more astonishing. Yi Li gently twisted his 2 fingers that held the dragon-slaying blade. Crack! The dragon-slaying blade broke. How was this possible? Meng Kangshan's eyes widened to their fullest extent. The dragon-slaying blade, one of the 10 great divine weapons, had been snapped in 2 by 2 fingers? A faint smile appeared on Yi Li's face as he looked at Meng Sangtian and said, When you received the dragon-slaying blade, why didn't you check if it was genuine? In the moment when he agreed to exchange with Meng Sangtian, Yili opened the points mall and spent 1,000 points to purchase a duplication opportunity, which could replicate anything but only produced useless duplicates. He duplicated the dragon-slaying blade, and then performed a switcheroo without Meng Kangxian's knowledge. However, Meng Sangtian was completely unaware and received the dragon-slaying blade with great arrogance, boasting that he would kill Yili. He was really stupid. Hearing this, Meng Sangtian finally understood. He looked at the broken dragon-slaying blade in his hand, realizing that it was a fake. Meng Sangtian, what will you do now? Yili said indifferently. Meng Sangtian was startled, looking at Yili's face with an unprecedented sense of terror. Yili, this is only the outskirts of the abandoned city. If you kill me here, you won't be able to leave the abandoned city, Meng Sangtian said in horror. Unfortunately, Yili had never been afraid of threats. Do you recognize this? Yili pointed to his own clothes. Meng Sangtian hesitated, not understanding why Yili was asking this. Yes. Yili nodded. Good, let me introduce you to something else. With that, Yili took the dragon-slaying blade from the system space. This time the dragon-slaying blade is genuine, Yili said calmly. But before Meng Sangtian could even appreciate the blade, Yili unleashed a powerful flame blade technique, and countless fire blades instantly swallowed Meng Sangtian. At this moment, the eighth evolved being, the sky-crushing demon hand Meng Sangtian, met his end. Ding! Congratulations to the host for slaying Meng Sangtian. You have obtained a super treasure chest. Would you like to open it? Yes. Congratulations to the host for obtaining a super treasure map. A brilliant smile appeared on Yili's face as he thought about going on another treasure hunt. Chapter 243. Opportunity for upgrade of all skills. Yili thought that before opening this super treasure map, he needed to clear the zombies in the abandoned city. He turned to look at Ziqiong and found her standing frozen in place like a statue. You can go now, Yili said slowly. Ziqiong, upon hearing this, snapped back to reality. She looked at Yili in astonishment and after a few seconds spoke, "Thank you, Senior Demon King, for saving me. 111 leave now." With that, Ziqiong quickly left the abandoned city. The oppressive feeling she experienced by Yili's side was too terrifying. After Ziqiong left, Yili prepared to clear out the zombies in the abandoned city with the Apocalypse Legion. As he moved forward and used the Heavenly Spirit Eyes to scan, he reached the center of the abandoned city and had the Apocalypse Legion attract the zombies. Quack, humans? Doesn't seem like it. A harsh voice suddenly entered Yili's ears. Yili followed the sound and saw an extremely ugly dark race member, a fourth-tier evolved being that looked like a duck. What kind of race are you from, and which force in the abandoned city do you belong to? The fourth-tier duck-like dark race member asked Yili. Yili's face remained calm as he shook his head slowly. One don't belong to any force. This answer surprised the fourth-tier duck-like dark race member. So you're an outsider? The duck stared at Yili. That's right. Yili nodded. Quack. The duck chuckled. Since you're an outsider, can one eat you? Yili's face remained as calm as ever. You can. The fourth-tier duck-like dark race member was taken aback. Aren't you afraid? Not at all, Yili said calmly. The duck became somewhat annoyed. In that case, 111 come over and eat you. As he spoke, it flew towards Yili. As the saying goes, you reap what you sow. Yili slowly raised his finger and golden spiritual light enveloped it. He pointed at the fourth-tier duck-like dark race member, and a terrifying golden spiritual light shot towards him. The duck was greatly shocked, unable to react to the speed of the attack, and was instantly pierced by the golden spiritual light. Yili couldn't understand. He really couldn't understand why there were so many ants who weren't afraid of death. Wasn't life worth living? At this moment, the Apocalypse Legion came, with a horde of zombies following behind. The number of zombies was overwhelming, like a dark cloud pressing down, creating a truly awe-inspiring sight. After giving the order, Yili opened the synthesis grid in his mind and prepared to synthesize these zombies. After a day and night of synthesis in the abandoned city, he finally achieved some results. Ding! Alda upgraded to an 8th-tier zombie. Bai Wawa upgraded to an 8th-tier zombie. Hongya upgraded to an 8th-tier zombie. Yutong upgraded to an 8th-tier zombie. Swordsman Achi upgraded to an 8th-tier zombie. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining a chance to randomly draw a prize. Would you like to use it? Yes. The virtual pointer spun rapidly within the roulette wheel and stopped a few seconds later. Congratulations to the host for obtaining an opportunity to upgrade all skills by +1. Yi felt lucky and immediately integrated this opportunity to upgrade all skills by +1 into himself and the Apocalypse Legion. Earth-shattering fist, wind, rain, lightning and thunder S grade. Absolute defense, Qilin foot S grade. Frost chi snow dance S grade. Petrification and light energy impact S grade. Death-dealing triple ghost sword B grade. Chapter 244. Countless Dark Race members. Yi originally thought that what Meng Zhangqian had said was true, and he had believed that the abandoned city harbored some powerful Dark Race members. Now it seemed that Meng Zhangqian was just trying to scare him. After upgrading the members of the Apocalypse Legion all to 8th tier zombies, Yi prepared to leave. Demon King Yi, after killing so many zombies in the abandoned city, do you think you can just leave? A sudden loud shout reached Yi's ears. Yi followed the sound and saw countless Dark Race members appearing on the rooftops surrounding him. Demon King Yi, you seem to take our Dark Race members in the abandoned city as nothing. Originally we didn't want to confront you, but who would have thought you would kill so many zombies? 10 8th tier Dark Race members. At this moment Yi and the Apocalypse Legion were completely surrounded by these Dark Race members. Yi looked calmly at the speaking Dark Race member, his face as serene as ever. Step aside or you will all die, Yi said slowly. Upon hearing this, the 10 8th tier Dark Race members burst into laughter, as if they had heard the funniest joke ever. You truly deserve to be Demon King. Your words are unlike those of ordinary people. But do you think you can escape from here? They had 10 8th tier Dark Race members as well as countless other Dark Race members. In their eyes there was no way Yi could escape. Who said 1 in 10 to escape? Yi said calmly. With these words, the 10 8th tier Dark Race members were taken aback. They couldn't fathom what else Yi could do besides attempting to run away. Could it be he wanted to fight? Although Yi and his Apocalypse Legion were both in the 8th tier, they were up against 10 8th tier Dark Race members. Demon King Yi, one truly admire your arrogance, but you are about to bid farewell to this world. Goodbye Yi. As the voice fell, one of the 8th tier Dark Race members gave the order. In an instant, all the Dark Race members in the abandoned city rushed towards Yi. This time, there were simply too many of them, so numerous that it would be impossible to count even with 10 days and 10 nights. Unfortunately Yi showed no fear. Yi took out the dragon-slaying blade from his system space, and a cold aura emanated from the blade. The Apocalypse Legion had already prepared for battle. Flame Blade Technique. Primordial Demon Slash. Yi swung the dragon-slaying blade, and countless low-tier Dark Race members instantly suffered heavy casualties. The Apocalypse Legion also used their respective skills, and the scene became horrifying. Seeing this, the 10 8th tier Dark Race members rushed forward together. The Apocalypse Legion was facing unprecedented opponents. Whether in the Annan-Bay City or the Huangjiang-Bay City, this battle was unlike any they had ever experienced. The Apocalypse Legion was gradually pushed back, and they all sustained severe injuries on the verge of collapse. Yi took out a small tower from his system space. The quaint tower was pitch black and had 7 levels. Yi tossed the tower upward, and the heavenly tower instantly enlarged, pressing down forcefully. The heavenly tower was definitely not something the Dark Race members could resist. The 10 8th tier Dark Race members were astonished and shouted in horror. Heavenly Tower? Yi opened the points mall and spent 100,000 points to purchase 10 Berserk potions. Then he drank all 10 Berserk potions at once. Immediately Yi's heart rate reached 1,000 beats per minute, and his entire body turned crimson. Chapter 245. A Year of Slumber. The 10 8th tier Dark Race members, with every 2 of them teaming up to fight one. By now, the Apocalypse Legion had all been severely injured and lost their combat capabilities. Yi smirked coldly. After drinking 10 Berserk potions, he was determined to make these 10 8th tier Dark Race members understand what true power was. But what happened next was truly shocking. With the tip of his toes, Yi leaped into the air, raising the dragon-slaying blade high and activating the 3rd level of the ancient Devil Tome. The dragon-slaying blade emitted a chilling light, and demonic aura filled the surroundings. He spoke word by word, Primordial Demon Slash. As he uttered these words, the dragon-slaying blade had already swung down. In an instant, it felt like the world had lost its brilliance. The enhancement from the 10 Berserk potions was truly terrifying. The 10 8th tier Dark Race members widened their eyes, unable to fathom how Yi could unleash such a terrifying attack. Swish, swish, swish. In an instant, all 10 8th tier Dark Race members were killed on the spot. This single strike was Yi's full-powered attack. After this strike, Yili fell to the ground, completely devoid of strength. He felt his life rapidly slipping away. I didn't die? Yili was taken aback, staring at his palms and realizing that nothing was wrong. Ada, Bai Wawa, Hongye, Yutong, and swordsman All Chi were all guarding by Yili's side. Brother, it's been a year since you fell asleep. Why are you only waking up now? Yutong pouted and looked at Yili. Yili was shocked. He distinctly remembered taking a short nap, but it had been a whole year? He remembered being besieged by 10 8th-tier Dark Race members and countless others of their kind alongside the Apocalypse Legion. In the final moments, he consumed 10 bottles of Berserk potions and unleashed the primordial demon Slash. Afterward he passed out. Truly, what felt like a day in the mountains had already been 1,000 years in the secular world. He thought to himself that he had indeed been lucky to survive such a crisis. Now that he was awake, he should leave the abandoned city. However, Yili suddenly remembered that he had a super treasure map. He opened the system space and prepared to activate the super treasure map. Ding! Would you like to activate the super treasure map? Yes. Super treasure map activation in progress. 10%, 30%, 60%, 100%. Coordinates: periphery of the Falling Rock Mountain Range. The periphery of the Falling Rock Mountain Range? Yili had been to the periphery of the Falling Rock Mountain Range before, and there was nothing particularly noteworthy there. Then Yili led the Apocalypse Legion away from the abandoned city. Since the coordinates on the super treasure map were in the Falling Rock Mountain Range, Yili decided to take this opportunity to visit the Flame Organization. After all, Luo Yu was his first disciple, and she had even given herself to him. After the Apocalypse Legion reached the 8th tier, their eyes had turned golden, radiating a dazzling light. Along the way, Yili learned quite a bit about the Flame Organization. Currently, the Flame Organization was a super major faction, reigning supreme in the northern part of the Wilderness Northern region, and no one dared to provoke them. However, recently the Flame Organization had encountered some troubles. While they were dominating the northern area of the Wilderness Northern region, the forces on the east of the Wilderness Northern region had become dissatisfied and engaged in a massive battle with them. The battle had raged for 3 days and 3 nights, only coming to a halt in the past few days. Yili didn't think too much about it and decided to head toward the Flame Organization with the Apocalypse Legion. Outside the Flame Organization, the Flame Base had been transformed into a magnificent fortress, exuding a sense of grandeur. Chapter 246. Demon King returns. As Yili was about to enter, he was stopped by the genetic warriors guarding the entrance. Halt! Do you know this is the Flame Base? A man stared at Yili. After a year had passed, the Flame Organization had already grown significantly, and it was normal for these gatekeeping genetic warriors not to recognize Yili. Yes. Yili replied calmly. Since you know, do you think you can just enter? Do you really believe that anyone can join the Flame Organization? The man taunted. Yili thought for a moment and then said, Go inside and report that Yili has arrived. What? Yili? All the dozen or so genetic warriors at the gate smiled disdainfully. They hadn't heard of the name Yili before, and they thought he must be quite full of himself. These dozen or so genetic warriors were all first-tier evolved beings, and they were looking at Yili with condescending expressions. Hee, do you know how many genetic warriors want to join Flame? One bet you're here to join Flame too, right? One of them said mockingly. Yili secretly smiled to himself. He couldn't understand why there were so many arrogant ants in this world. Suddenly, a man with nose, lip and ear piercings and hair dyed in various colors walked out. He had a bizarre appearance. Guardian Third Ghost, this guy wants to join the Flame Organization and asked us to report that Yili has arrived, one of the genetic warriors said. All the genetic warriors turned to look at Guardian Third Ghost, eager to see how he would mock Yili. Guardian Third Ghost chuckled, thinking that there were too many stupid people in the Wilderness Northern region, but the name Yili, when he looked at Yili's face, he was stunned, truly stunned. Senior Demon King? Guardian Third Ghost rubbed his eyes. He couldn't believe it was real. Guardian Third Ghost was none other than Old Three from the Western Mountain Ghouls in the Wilderness Northern region. Senior Demon King, we all thought you had left the Wilderness Northern region. We never expected. Before Guardian Third Ghost could finish his sentence, Yili interrupted him. Take me inside to see Luo Yu, Yili said calmly. Guardian Third Ghost didn't dare to be negligent and quickly led Yili inside. The dozen or so genetic warriors were stunned. They looked at each other and were at a loss as to why Guardian Third Ghost was showing such deference to Yili. Senior Demon King? Right, is he the Demon King Yi Li who shook the entire wilderness northern region a year ago? One of the genetic warriors suddenly said. As soon as this was said, the dozen or so genetic warriors instantly froze. As if all the strength had been drained from their bodies, they collapsed to the ground weakly, and their pupils became empty as if they had lost their souls. They were utterly terrified. Guardian Third Ghost led Yi Li to the meeting hall where Luo Yu and a group of genetic warriors were in a meeting. Leader, Senior Demon King has returned. As soon as this was said, Luo Yu froze as if turned into a statue. She slowly raised her head to look at the young man standing next to Guardian Third Ghost. Senior Demon King? Luo Yu felt like everything was a dream. She couldn't believe that Yi Li would appear before her at this moment. She had thought that Yi Li had already left the wilderness northern region. All the genetic warriors in the meeting hall were also stunned. Did they even need to say more about the title of Demon King Yi Li? Chapter 247. The Sky Eagle Organization. Yi Li's face remained calm, and he paid no attention to the shocked expressions of the others. I heard that another organization is causing trouble for you? Yi Li looked at Luo Yu with a hint of indifference. Luo Yu snapped back to reality and quickly replied, Yes, Senior. Although flame dominates north of the wilderness northern region, we don't mean much in the eastern part of the wilderness northern region. We've been in a 3-day battle with the Sky Eagle Organization, and there have been countless casualties. Sky Eagle Organization? The name Sky Eagle Organization was completely unfamiliar to Yi Li. Senior, the Sky Eagle Organization is one of the 3 major organizations in the eastern part of the wilderness northern region. They possess powerful weapons, and each member wields a specially made laser gun. After hearing Luo Yu's explanation, Yi Li understood. The Sky Eagle Organization was probably similar to a base city, but it was much stronger than the Annan base city and the Huangjiang base city. Senior, the Sky Eagle Organization's intention is to unify the northern part of the wilderness northern region. They have given us 3 days. If we don't agree, they will destroy Flame. Now, all the small and large organizations in the northern part of the wilderness northern region have submitted to the Sky Eagle Organization, except for Flame. Luo Yu explained at length, trying to make Yi Li understand the situation. If Yi Li hadn't appeared, she wouldn't know what to do. Yi Li was the reason of Flame's rise. Since they've given us 3 days, I will wait for them here, Yi Li spoke slowly. Thinking about it, it seemed like another tough battle awaited. In that case, the matter of the super treasure map would have to be put on hold for now. Yi Li stayed at Flame Base for 3 days. After 3 days, 2 men in suits, accompanied by various major forces on the north of the wilderness northern region, arrived outside Flame Base. There were tens of thousands of people in their group. The Flame organization had also grown to tens of thousands in size by now. To Yi Li's surprise, both of these men in suits were 8th-tier evolved beings. He had originally underestimated the wilderness northern region, but now he realized that he had underestimated the world's heroes. In this light, Meng Tsangtian was merely a dominant figure in the northern part of the wilderness northern region. Luo Yu, have you thought it over? A man named Jiang Feng asked as he looked at Luo Yu. Jiang Feng was in his 40s, and he was the second leader of the Sky Eagle organization. The other man, Tian Yi, was also around 40 years old and was the third leader of the Sky Eagle organization. Luo Yu was currently a 5th-tier evolved being. Although she had reached this level at a young age, she was still worlds apart from Jiang Feng and Tian Yi in terms of strength. You can forget about your dreams. Even if all the forces in the northern part of the wilderness northern region submit to you, Flame will not. Luo Yu said coldly. Jiang Feng and Tian Yi's expressions turned cold upon hearing this. Luo Yu, you're just a minor 5th-tier evolved being. How dare you be so arrogant? Well, give you a taste of your own medicine. Yi Li's return had given Luo Yu confidence, and she looked at Jiang Feng and Tian Yi coldly. Flame will submit to no one. Luo Yu replied coldly. As soon as this was said, Jiang Feng and Tian Yi's faces clouded over. Luo Yu, since you refuse, we'll have to end your life. As soon as Jiang Feng spoke, he prepared to make his move. However, before Jiang Feng could act, a lazy voice suddenly appeared in everyone's ears. You dare to let my disciple die? You're not qualified. Who's speaking? Jiang Feng shouted. Chapter 248. Dare you fight me? The members of the Flame organization parted in the middle, and a handsome young man leisurely walked over. The youth's face was as tranquil as water, as if nothing in the world could disturb him. Jiang Feng and Tian Yi stared at the youth, their expressions immediately becoming serious. I never expected Flame to have an 8th-tier evolved being, Jiang Feng said coldly. His intuition told him that the youth in front of him was very strong, and he sensed a strong aura of danger. Jiang Feng and Tian Yi were both backed by various forces from the north of the wilderness northern region. When they heard Jiang Feng's words, they were all stunned. An 8th-tier evolved being? How could Flame have such an existence? They couldn't understand, they really couldn't. Who are you? Jiang Feng stared at Yi Li. Yi Li. Yi Li spoke slowly. Yi Li? Jiang Feng narrowed his eyes. He had never heard of this name before. Or you can call me Demon King Yi Li, Yi Li continued. What? As soon as these words were spoken, Jiang Feng, Tian Yi, and the genetic warriors behind them were all shocked. Demon King Yi Li? A year ago he was a prominent figure in the wilderness northern region. But Demon King Yi Li hadn't appeared for a year, and it was rumored that he had left the wilderness northern region. How could he suddenly reappear? Demon King Yi Li? A cold light flashed in Jiang Feng's eyes. I know you. I've heard that you're neither human nor dark race member, and you have an Apocalypse Legion. However, your pitiful little force is a joke in the eyes of our Sky Eagle organization. Jiang Feng sneered as he looked at Yi Li. Yi Li's face remained calm as he replied, perhaps. But if I want to kill you, it will be as easy as slaughtering pigs and dogs. What did you say? Jiang Feng stared at Yi Li, and as the second leader of the Sky Eagle organization, he had never been insulted like this before. Do you want to try? Yi Li looked at Jiang Feng and Tian Yi calmly. Ha ha ha. However, Tian Yi suddenly burst into laughter. Tian Yi's body was as strong as an ox, and even though he was wearing clothes, it couldn't hide his steel-like physique. Yi Li, it seems you really don't know what you're about to face. You can never imagine the strength of the Sky Eagle organization. Tian Yi stared at Yi Li. Hee, I don't need to imagine. Yi Li's face remained serene. Upon hearing this, Tian Yi became furious and pointed at Yi Li's head with his finger. Yi Li, do you dare to fight me? I have a unique set of martial arts, and even though we're both 8th-tier evolved beings, there's no way you can defeat me. Tian Yi looked at Yi Li with pride, firmly believing that Yi Li wouldn't dare to accept his challenge. The members of the Flame organization and the genetic warriors from the northern part of the wilderness northern region dared not take a breath. In their eyes, the conversation among Yi Li and Jiang Feng and Tian Yi was like a battle of gods. Do you even deserve to fight me? Yi Li slowly shook his head. Tian Yi felt insulted by Yi Li's response. He had never experienced such humiliation before. Yi Li, it seems you don't dare, yet you call yourself the Demon King Yi Li. It's truly laughable. Tian Yi said firmly. Yi Li, however, smiled faintly. How about this? I'll let a member of my Apocalypse Legion fight you. If you win, Flame will submit to the Sky Eagle organization. If you lose, you'll have to leave. Deal? Tian Yi immediately agreed without even thinking, as he had absolute confidence in himself. Chapter 249. By Wawa vs. Tian Yi. Members of the Flame organization and various major forces from the wilderness northern region widened their eyes upon hearing this. The third leader of the Sky Eagle organization, Tian Yi, was about to battle a member of the Apocalypse Legion. This was a once-in-lifetime spectacle. Yi Li, am ready. Let your Apocalypse Legion member come out, Tian Yi said, staring at Yi Li. Yi Li smiled faintly and released Bai Wawa from the system space. Tian Yi was skilled in martial arts, while Bai Wawa had an absolute defense. Both sides were evenly matched and it was like a showdown between two equals. Yi Li had absolute confidence in Bai Wawa, especially since Bai Wawa's absolute defense had reached the S grade. Ancient Chinese martial arts included skills like Golden Bell Shield, Iron Cloth Shirt, and the 13 Guardian Technique. Bai Wawa had a wide and stout physique, and if you put him on a scale he would weigh close to 200 pounds or so. Tian Yi stared into Bai Wawa's golden eyes and sneered, 8th-tier zombie, truly terrifying. The members of the Flame organization and the genetic warriors from the wilderness northern region held their breath, afraid to say a word. They stared fixedly at the scene, fearing that they might miss the show. Yi Li, let's begin. Tian Yi shouted at Yi Li. Tian Yi was extremely confident in his martial arts skills. Even though Bai Wawa was an 8th-tier zombie, he didn't believe that Bai Wawa stood a chance against him. Do one need to teach you how to do it? Yi Li asked Bai Wawa. No need, master, Bai Wawa nodded. Then Bai Wawa took a big step forward. Their eyes locked onto each other, and it seemed that a great battle was about to begin. Silence, a deadly silence. Suddenly Tian Yi's fist shook, and a strong wind began to howl. Tianyi had seemingly pushed his strength to the limit. He charged forward at an incredible speed. In an instant, Tianyi arrived in front of Bai Wawa, and he threw a powerful punch at him. This punch didn't contain any spiritual energy, but it had a shocking and overwhelming force. Bai Wawa, however, stood still as if he hadn't seen the punch coming at all. Boom! Tianyi's punch, which seemingly carried the force of 10,000 pounds, struck Bai Wawa's body squarely. Everyone watched in silence, waiting to see who would win. It's over. A happy smile appeared on Tianyi's lips. He had thought that this 8th-tier zombie had some ability, but it seemed that he was wrong. This 8th-tier zombie didn't even know how to dodge. After this punch, it was likely that the zombie would lose its fighting ability. Unfortunately, Tianyi would rather believe that he would only live for one more second than believe that his punch had caused no harm to the zombie. However, Bai Wawa grinned as if the punch that struck him with the force of 10,000 pounds was nothing more than a tickle. What? Tianyi was shocked beyond belief. How could he have expected that the 8th-tier zombie would still be able to smile after his punch, as if it had caused no harm at all? The next moment, Bai Wawa raised his fist in turn and struck Tianyi's body fiercely. Tianyi gritted his teeth and showed no intention of dodging. Bai Wawa's punch landed squarely on Tianyi's body. To Yi Li's surprise, Tianyi didn't even take a step back. Yi Li smiled faintly, thinking that Tianyi was stronger than he thought. Chapter 250. Take one more step, die. Members of the Flame Organization and genetic warriors from the north of the Wilderness Northern region were all stunned. They thought that this was already the most shocking moment, but what awaited them was even more astonishing. Bai Wawa and Tianyi engaged in a fierce battle, exchanging blows with each punch displaying incredible power. Bai Wawa's absolute defense was now at the S grade, making his defense astonishing. Tianyi and Bai Wawa didn't know how many rounds they fought, but the audience's eyes were now wider than they had ever been in their entire lives. Their mouths were agape, wide enough to hold a large bowl. Luo Yu was in shock, wondering if this was what battles between strong individuals looked like. It was absolutely terrifying. Yi Li, however, remained calm with a face as serene as water. He believed that Bai Wawa would win because Bai Wawa hadn't even used his trump card yet. Bai Wawa and Tianyi continued to exchange countless blows, and Tianyi began to feel the strain on his stamina. He looked at Bai Wawa coldly, then suddenly raised his fist and shouted, "Vajra Overlord Fist." As he spoke, Tianyi unleashed a punch with a burst of Vajra Phantom. Bai Wawa raised his tiptoe and leaped several meters into the air. His right foot had transformed into the Qilin foot. Bai Wawa's current title was Iron-Footed Zombie, and his Qilin foot struck directly at Tianyi. The collision between the Vajra Overlord Fist and the Qilin foot created a deafening explosion. Boom! A thunderous roar rang out, and members of the Flame Organization and genetic warriors from the Wilderness Northern region fell to the ground. Their faces were filled with terror. Such a battle was beyond anything they had ever witnessed. Splurt! Tianyi suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying backward. Third brother? Jiang Feng shouted loudly and took a swift step to reach Tianyi's side. Fortunately, Tianyi still had a breath left. At this moment, the faces of everyone were filled with absolute shock because this battle was truly unprecedented. However, Yi Li's face remained as calm as ever, as if nothing had happened. He looked at Jiang Feng and said, "Go back. In my eyes you're just like ants." Upon hearing this, Jiang Feng was furious. As the second in command of the Sky Eagle organization, he had never been so humiliated. "Yi Li, don't think that winning against Old Third makes you invincible. Now I'll show you what true strength is," Jiang Feng declared angrily. With that, he launched a fierce attack against Yi Li. Now he held a deep grudge against Yi Li and he was determined to seek revenge. Yi Li was a bit helpless. The one who had injured Tianyi was Bai Wawa, not him. He slowly raised his finger and a golden spiritual light wrapped around it. Swish! A wind-breaking sound was heard, and the ground beneath Jiang Feng's feet was instantly torn open by the golden spiritual light, creating a large pit. Jiang Feng was so frightened that a chill ran down his spine. His previous anger had completely disappeared. SSS-level genetic warrior? Jiang Feng looked at Yi Li in utter shock. As an S-level genetic warrior, he knew that he couldn't defeat another SSS-level genetic warrior. "Take one more step and you'll die," Yi Li calmly warned Jiang Feng. Yi Li didn't want to kill Tianyi and Jiang Feng at the moment. After all, he was about to head to the eastern part of the Wilderness Northern region. He would deal with them later. Startled, Jiang Feng didn't dare to take another step forward. After a few moments of contemplation, Jiang Feng picked up Tianyi and swiftly departed from the area, and the whole process seemed to flow seamlessly. Chapter 251. No more business here at this moment. The genetic warriors from the north of the Wilderness Northern region were all in shock. They were the forces north of the Wilderness Northern region, with the Flame organization as their leader, yet they had surrendered to the Sky Eagle organization. Now that the second and third leaders of the Sky Eagle organization had already retreated, what about them? They didn't dare to think any further. They really didn't dare to continue thinking. Leader Luo Yu, we were wrong, one of the organization leaders said, looking at Luo Yu in fear. As soon as these words were spoken, the leaders of the various organizations quickly echoed in agreement. Luo Yu looked at these organization leaders. Although she was angry, the main reason these organization leaders had become turncoats was that Flame couldn't protect them. Surviving in the wilderness zone was already not easy, and how they survived didn't matter as long as they stayed alive. Join Flame now, Yili said, looking at the organization leaders. Seeing that it was Yili speaking, the organization leaders dared not refuse. Yes, Senior Demon King. Luo Yu looked at Yili gratefully. Although she had given herself to Yili, she did not expect Yili to stay with her. She knew that someone like Yili would never stoop to stay in a place like this. Yili didn't stay in Flame for long. He headed to the eastern part of the Wilderness Northern region. The east side of the Wilderness Northern region was much stronger than the north, and the Falling Rock Mountain Range was located in the east of the Wilderness Northern region. The coordinates of the Super Treasure map were also in the Falling Rock Mountain Range, but before searching for the treasure, Yili had to deal with some matters first. After all, the overall strength of the Sky Eagle organization was much stronger than that of Flame. If this issue wasn't resolved, Flame would not last long. Yili arrived at a dilapidated small town that had long been abandoned. He walked slowly and noticed that not far ahead, there was still a noodle shop with smoke rising from its chimney. Yili was surprised to see that there were still people doing business here. Were there customers? He found it interesting, and since he was a bit hungry, he walked into the noodle shop. A thick layer of dust had settled on the few tables in the noodle shop, but there was a man with sharp features and a skinny face eating noodles with relish. "Boss," Yili called out. But there was no response. Yili thought that maybe the owner was not there. "Boss?" he called out again. Still there was no response. Yili looked at the man eating noodles in front of him. The man appeared to be in his 30s and was a third-tier evolved being. "Friend, where's the owner of this noodle shop?" Yili asked slowly. The man finished his last bite of noodles, then raised his head slightly to look at Yili. In that instant he was shocked to his core. He couldn't believe there could be such a good-looking person in the world. Compared to him, it was like heaven and earth. Feeling disgruntled, the man looked at Yili with disdain. "I am the owner here. What do you want?" Yili smiled and spoke slowly. "Aside from eating noodles, is there anything else to do here? We don't do business here anymore. You should leave," the man said coldly. "I see you're enjoying those noodles. Would you mind cooking me a bowl?" "Money is not an issue," Yili said casually. When Yili left Flame, he had brought a considerable amount of post-apocalyptic coins with him. Not to mention eating a bowl of noodles, he could eat noodles for a lifetime and still not run out of money. "I said we don't do business here anymore. Can't you hear?" The man looked extremely impatient as he spoke to Yili. Chapter 252. Eat up all the dust on the table. Yili smiled. Considering the man before him was just a lowly second-tier evolved being, it was audacious of him to speak to him in such a manner. "It's a pity that one must insist you cook me a bowl of noodles right now," Yili said calmly, looking at the man. Since he had crossed over into this parallel world, he hadn't eaten noodles, and since they were available here, he thought it might be good to savor the taste of home. The sharp-featured man was momentarily stunned. He hadn't expected Yili to make such a request. "Kid, this is my territory. What if I refuse to cook?" The man stared at Yili box novel. "Calm, in that case, 111 have you eat all the dust on the table," Yili replied calmly. The man was taken aback, sizing up Yili. He had seen arrogant people before, but this level of arrogance was a first. This place wasn't just a noodle shop. The man wondered if this person had found out something. With this thought in mind, the man's pupils rapidly contracted. "Brat, do you know something?" The man stared intently at Yili. Yili smiled inwardly. He had initially thought this place was just an ordinary noodle shop, but it seemed there was a hidden secret. "I don't know anything. I just want a bowl of noodles," Yili said leisurely. The man banged on the table in anger, pointing his finger at Yili's head and said coldly, "Get out of here." Leave now or don't blame me for being impolite. Yili looked at the man's finger which was pointing at his head. A slight smile played on his lips as he made a small gesture. Are you worthy of pointing your finger at my head? As the words left his mouth, a golden light shot out from Yili's pupils. The man was only a second-tier evolved being, and he didn't even have time to react. Ali! A piercing scream, like that of a slaughtered pig, echoed through the air. The man's finger had been severed. Yili had once sworn that he would never let anyone point their finger at his head. When he was a child, he had a meal with his mother, but because he said something wrong and offended her, she pointed 2 fingers at his head, forcing him to finish an entire pot of rice. Fortunately, his father had eaten it on his behalf. Little did he know it was not over yet. His mother even called his grandmother to join in, using 4 fingers to point at his head, forcing him to finish the previous day's pot of rice. From that moment on, he had vowed never to let anyone point their finger at his head again. Since transmigrating into this parallel world, no one had dared to point their finger at his head. This sharp-featured man had brought this misfortune upon himself. The man let out one horrifying scream after another, making one's scalp tingle. Yili remained calm and composed as if he couldn't hear the man's screams at all. Eat all the dust on this table or you'll die right away, Yili said calmly. Hearing this, the man felt as though he had fallen into an ice cave. He had already forgotten about the pain, and he stared at Yili with a soul-shaking look of horror. He never expected Yili to be so terrifying. If he could do it all over again he would never have acted this way. Do you know where this place is? Yili shook his head slightly. One don't really care about where this place is. I just want you to eat up all the dust on this table. Don't make me say it a 3rd time. The man, despite the excruciating pain, dared not scream. He knew that Yili was not making an empty threat. If he didn't eat all the dust on this table he would disappear from this world forever. Chapter 253. How about we make a bet? The man endured the pain and began to lick the dust on the table below him. The table had not been cleaned for who knows how long, and the dust was extremely thick. The man's face turned green, then red, then purple. Finally, the man managed to eat all the dust on the table. He glared at Yili with malice in his eyes, vowing to avenge this humiliation. Now go and cook me some noodles, Yili said calmly. Box novel. Calm. The man was on the verge of tears. His finger had just been severed and the pain was unbearable. Now he was being asked to cook noodles? Don't want to go? Yili looked at the man indifferently. Senior, I'm in too much pain. Please let me go, the man pleaded. Yili gave a faint smile. Actually, I have a way to relieve your pain. What method? The man quickly asked. Yili pondered for a few seconds and then said, in this world good people feel pain and bad people feel pain too. Only dead people don't feel pain. As soon as these words were uttered, the man was terrified to his core. Senior, They'll go cook the noodles for you right away, the man said in a panic. Before long, the man brought a bowl of noodles to Yili. Yili took a taste. It had the taste of home. Senior, I've cooked the noodles for you. Can you let me go now? The man asked cautiously. Go ahead, Yili said calmly. The man was relieved and quickly ran out. As soon as he was out of sight, his face turned cold. After finishing the noodles, Yili decided to investigate the noodle shop's secrets using his heavenly spirit eyes. To his surprise, in a cave on the left side of the noodle shop, there were over 100 human captives, all of them ordinary people. It was rumored that on the east of the wilderness northern region, there was an organization conducting research on a drug that could enhance human genes, and these captives were probably used for experiments. As for the man, Yili could easily guess that he had gone to get reinforcements. In that case he would wait here. As expected, not long after, the sharp-featured second-tier evolved being arrived with a dozen or so genetic warriors. These genetic warriors were all second-tier evolved beings and they surrounded Yili. Brat, you didn't expect me to turn the tables, did you? Hee hee, you broke one of my fingers, now I'm going to make you pay back 100-fold. The man said coldly. Yili shook his head inwardly. He couldn't understand why there were so many ignorant ants in this world. Do you really believe your eyes? Yili said calmly, looking at the man. The man was puzzled. Yili was now surrounded by more than a dozen second-tier evolved beings, and yet he was saying something so nonsensical? Shouldn't he be afraid now? Why don't we make a bet? Yili continued. The man clenched his teeth. Although he saw Yili as a dead man already, he was curious to see what tricks Yili had up his sleeve. Brat, what kind of trick do you think you can play? The man sneered at Yili. Yili smiled. Do you believe that I can show you their corpses in less than a second? When the dozen or so second-tier evolved beings heard this, they were first surprised, then burst into laughter. Ha ha ha. Brat, who do you think you are? Show me their corpses in less than a second? Ridiculous. The man's tone was full of disdain. Chapter 254. Hundreds of people in the cage. Yili smiled and said, not only can one make you see their corpses in 1 second, but one don't even need to use my hands. What? When this statement came out, the dozen or so second-tier evolved beings became furious. They couldn't believe that there was such an arrogant person in this world. Brat, you mean to say you can do it with your eyes? The man sneered. You're right, I'll use my eyes, Yili said casually. Box novel. The man was startled, suddenly recalling the scene when his finger was severed earlier. The speed was so fast that he couldn't even see it clearly. Could it be? Could it be that this person also used his eyes just now? That's impossible, absolutely impossible. The man shook his head vigorously, clearing his mind of these thoughts. Brat, I'd like to see how you can make me see their corpses in 1 second, the man sneered. Attack. With a shout from the sharp-featured man, the dozen or so second-tier evolved beings rushed towards Yili. In Yili's eyes, these dozen or so second-tier evolved beings were pitifully weak, like specks of dust. Swish, swish, swish. Yili activated his heavenly spirit eyes, and more than 10 golden lights shot out from his pupils. These dozen or so second-tier evolved beings couldn't react in time. There were instantly horrifying bloody holes on their heads. The entire process was incredibly fast, not even taking a second. The sharp-featured man had been scared out of his wits. It seems that I've won this bet, Yili said calmly, looking at the man. The man quickly knelt down in fear, desperately begging Yili, please spare me. I don't want to die, one really don't want to die. Yili smiled faintly. Then why were so many ordinary people imprisoned in that cave? Although he believed that these ordinary people were probably used for experiments, it was best to clarify the situation. The man turned pale with fright. He had suspected that Yili had come for this matter, and it seemed he was right. Those ordinary people are used for experiments by the fire-worshipping sect, the man stammered, his voice trembling. Fire-worshipping sect? Yili had never heard of this name, but it was likely another cult, similar to the White Lotus sect. Now that you've told me what you know, you can go on your way, Yili said to the man. The man was terrified. But before he could finish his sentence, a horrifying bloody hole appeared on his forehead. The man fell to the ground, his eyes wide open as if he couldn't believe he had died like this. Yili retracted his finger. He had never considered himself a good person, but he was certainly not a bad person either. Yili usually did things without needing any reason. Yili walked slowly towards the cave on the outer side of the noodle shop. The mountain was not very high and there was a cave on its slope. He arrived at the entrance of the cave and walked inside. The cave was quite spacious, with a large cage inside that contained hundreds of human beings. These humans were all dirty and their eyes were dull as if they hadn't eaten for days. Upon seeing someone enter the cave, dozens of genetic warriors inside the cave immediately shouted, "Stop! Are you here to take these people?" a man asked. Yili smiled inwardly. It seemed that these people mistook him for a member of the fire-worshipping sect. Chapter 255. A kill in less than a second. Yili shook his head. I'm not here to take these people. The dozens of genetic warriors were puzzled. If he wasn't here to take the people, then what was he here for? What are you here for then? A man asked suspiciously. Just here to take a look, nothing more, Yili said casually. The man's expression turned cold. Brat, you're not trying to rescue these people, are you? Box novel. As soon as this was said, the dozens of genetic warriors became wary, but seeing that Yili was alone, they felt more at ease. I'm not. Yili shook his head. The dozens of genetic warriors were once again taken aback. Since he wasn't a member of the fire-worshipping sect, and he wasn't here to rescue anyone, then what was he here for? Was he just sightseeing? If he didn't have a purpose, how did he even find this place? Tell us, Brat, what are you doing here? One genetic warrior demanded, giving Yili a cold stare. These dozen or so men were all second-tier evolved beings. While they might be formidable in smaller places, they were facing Yili now. I've already said it, I'm just here to take a look, Yili said nonchalantly. No one would believe that. You're going to tell us today one way or another or else. The man's words were left hanging, accompanied by a menacing glare, implying that Yili would suffer the consequences. Yili just smiled calmly. I've always been the one to threaten others. No one has ever dared to threaten me. The dozens of second-tier evolved beings were infuriated by his words. They had encountered arrogant people before, but someone this arrogant was unheard of. Since you want talk, don't blame us. Brothers, attack. With a shout from one of the second-tier evolved beings, the dozens of them charged at Yili. Yili shook his head inwardly. He had simply come to take a look, but why did people always doubt what he said? He slowly raised his finger and a golden spiritual light wrapped around it. Then he pointed. The horrifying golden spiritual light flew towards the dozens of second-tier evolved beings. These second-tier evolved beings widened their eyes in shock, unable to react in time. There were horrifying bloody holes on their foreheads. How is this possible? In the cage, a middle-aged man exclaimed in shock. The hundreds of ordinary people in the cage might not be genetic warriors, but they were familiar with genetic warriors. How could so many genetic warriors be killed in an instant? They hadn't even seen it clearly, and these genetic warriors had bloody holes on their foreheads, falling dead to the ground. The hundreds of people in the cage were all ordinary citizens, and seeing this situation they couldn't help but be terrified, their fear reaching its peak. Yili walked towards the iron cage, his face calm and serene. With each step he took, the hearts of the people sank deeper. It felt as if the gate of hell was opening up for them. What do you want? A woman asked in horror. Yili didn't say a word. He had reached the edge of the iron cage, which was locked with a massive padlock. The terrified crowd watched Yili. In their eyes, Yili seemed to want to open the cage and kill them all. Based on how Yili had killed those dozens of genetic warriors, he was undoubtedly a ruthless murderer. Chapter 256. Captain Ling Fei. The crowd watched Yili in horror, silently hoping that he wouldn't be able to break the massive padlock. After all, it was a gigantic lock. Yili calmly looked at the iron lock in front of him and then suddenly raised one finger. The onlookers didn't understand the purpose of Yili raising his finger. Then, without warning, Yili poked the lock with the finger. Boom. Box novel. Calm with a deafening sound, the massive iron lock instantly shattered into pieces. How was this possible? The hundreds of people inside the cage were shocked beyond belief. They had hoped Yili wouldn't open the lock because it was so massive. However, they couldn't have imagined that Yili's finger could effortlessly destroy the lock. Such a big lock was actually pierced into pieces by Yili's finger. Yili opened the iron cage and gazed at the people inside with indifference. Are you all very afraid? Yili asked slowly. The crowd was taken aback. How could they not be scared? Even the massive iron lock had been shattered by Yili's finger. If that finger were directed at them, they could easily imagine the consequences. Never be afraid because everything I do will make you terrified for 3 days and 3 nights, Yili continued. His words only heightened the fear of the crowd. Everything he did? Did that mean he was going to kill them next? They didn't want to die. They really didn't want to die. Are you all hungry? Yili smiled. Then he took out many boxes of food from his system space. Yili had stored countless boxes of food in his system space, just because he had the space available. When he first got the system, he had only had 2 slots in his system space. Now he had 10,000 slots. Suddenly seeing the food, the people were stunned for a moment. Then they voraciously began eating. They hadn't had a proper meal in days. Yili watched as they devoured the food. He realized that in this world, both the strong and the ordinary people, the rich and the poor, all needed to eat. Eating well made people feel secure. After finishing their meal, a middle-aged man looked at Yili gratefully. Noble Lord, thank you for saving us. The others quickly chimed in with their gratitude. Without Yili, they didn't know how they would end up. Where are you all from? Yili asked. We are ordinary citizens from the Sky Eagle base, sir, the man replied. Yili nodded. The Sky Eagle organization, like a base city, had both genetic warriors and ordinary people. It was just a coincidence that he had encountered people of the Sky Eagle. It was quite interesting. A playful expression appeared on Yili's face. Everyone, don't worry. We've come to rescue you. A sudden voice appeared in Yili's ears. Yili slowly turned around and saw a woman leading a dozen or so 4th-tier evolved beings rushing in. The woman was dressed casually and had a delicate face. She appeared to be in her early 20s, yet she was a 5th-tier evolved being. It's Captain Ling Fei. Captain Ling Fei is here to save us. A man cheered. Yeah, Captain Ling Fei is here, so we're safe now. Boo-hoo, Mom, I thought I was a goner. The hundreds of people in the cage cheered and cried, looking extremely excited. Don't worry, all of you are members of the Sky Eagle organization. No matter what danger you face, we will always come to your rescue, Ling Fei said to the crowd with determination. Chapter 257. State your purpose. After Ling Fei finished speaking, she became somewhat astonished. There were dozens of corpses on the ground. Who could have killed them? Moreover, there were all gruesome blood holes on their heads, appearing to be fatal blows. This was undoubtedly the work of a formidable individual. The people from the Sky Eagle base were currently outside the iron cage. They had undoubtedly been rescued by someone. Ling Fei suddenly looked at Yi Li. Although she couldn't discern Yi Li's level of cultivation, her intuition told her that Yi Li was not an ordinary person. She thought that Yi Li might be suppressing her own cultivation. It was no secret that the fire-worshipping sect captured ordinary people on the north of the wilderness northern region. Box novel. Could they have caught the wrong person? Are you from the Sky Eagle base? Ling Fei asked Yi Li. No. Yi Li shook his head. Then did you kill these people? Ling Fei inquired. Yi Li thought for a moment and then said, I merely moved my finger and then they died. I didn't intend to kill them. Upon hearing this, Ling Fei understood. Dozens of corpses on the ground couldn't possibly be the work of the young man before her. Achieving such a single-strike kill was impossible for someone as young as him. Furthermore, the way he spoke was so arrogant, and he wasn't from the Sky Eagle base. So why was he hiding among these ordinary people? Ling Fei, as the captain of the Sky Eagle base's security team, felt it was necessary to clarify. What's your name? Ling Fei stared at Yi Li and asked. Yi Li. Yi Li spoke slowly. Ling Fei was momentarily stunned. The name sounded familiar, like she had heard it recently, but she couldn't remember where. If I guess correctly, you're a genetic warrior, right? Ling Fei looked at Yi Li with hostility. Hee hee. A hint of a smile appeared on Yi Li's face. What are you laughing at? Ling Fei was puzzled. She didn't understand why Yi Li was smiling at this moment. Look at the corpses on the ground. If Yi Li, weren't a genetic warrior, how do you think they would have died? Yi Li said calmly. Arrogant, absolutely arrogant. Although Ling Fei couldn't figure out where Yi Li's arrogance came from, she felt that he was indeed arrogant. She couldn't believe that these people were killed by Yi Li just because he was at most a second-tier evolved being. He was merely suppressing his real realm so she couldn't discern it. For a moment, a hint of disgust welled up in Ling Fei's heart. She had always detested people who were arrogant and full of themselves yet lacked the skills to back it up. You just said you're not from the Sky Eagle base. Why are you here? Ling Fei finally got to the point. Dozens of members of the Sky Eagle base's security team also looked at Yi Li, wanting to hear his response. Because there were dogs barking outside, Yi Li said slowly. When this statement was made, Ling Fei and the dozen or so security team members were left dumbfounded. They couldn't fathom the connection between dogs barking outside and his appearance here. What does dogs barking outside have anything to do with your presence here? Ling Fei asked Yi Li. Yi Li smiled faintly, and after a few seconds he spoke slowly. Then what does my presence here have anything to do with you? Ling Fei's expression instantly turned cold as she spoke in a cold tone. Are you playing with me? A hint of playful intent appeared on Yi Li's face. Are you fun to play with? Ling Fei and the dozen or so security team members were all infuriated. They stared intently at Yi Li. He'll give you one more chance to state your purpose or you'll face the consequences, Ling Fei said coldly. Chapter 258. It was this gentleman who saved us, Captain Ling Fei. It was him who saved us. That's right, Captain Ling Fei. This gentleman here killed those people. I didn't even get a chance to see clearly and they were all dead. Yes, I just felt this gentleman move his finger and then they died. The Sky Eagle base's rescued civilians began speaking up for Yi Li. In their eyes, Yi Li not only saved them but also provided them with food, making him their savior. Ling Fei heard these words and her eyes widened in disbelief, as if everything was too incredible to be true. Box novel. Is what you're saying true? Ling Fei asked the crowd. It's true, Captain Ling Fei. This gentleman is truly an unparalleled powerhouse. He's incredibly powerful, a man quickly responded. Ling Fei was surprised as she looked at Yi Li. All the dozens of corpses on the ground were second-tier evolved beings, and they all had a blood hole in the same place on their foreheads, undoubtedly from a single fatal blow. She admitted that she couldn't achieve such a one-hit kill. Could this person be even stronger than her? Thinking about this, astonishment became more evident in Ling Fei's beautiful eyes. Although you saved the people from our Sky Eagle base, I still need to know your purpose. Is it simply to rescue them or? Ling Fei's words were left incomplete. She wanted to see how Yili would respond. But she never dreamed that Yili would respond this way. Yili looked calmly at Ling Fei and said slowly, "Do I need to tell you what my purpose is?" Silence, a deadly silence. Ling Fei had never encountered someone like Yili before. Her intuition told her that Yili was not a bad person because he had saved these civilians. However, just to be sure, she needed to ask. After all, this place was quite secluded, and they had investigated for a long time before discovering it. Yet this young man seemed to know everything. She wouldn't believe there was no purpose behind it. "I'll give you one more chance. Now tell me or not." Ling Fei's delicate face grew colder and she stared at Yili. "I'm very curious," Yili said calmly. "What are you curious about?" Ling Fei was puzzled. Yili supported his chin with a hand and said, "I'm curious why a mere ant like you dares to say such things to me." "What?" Not only Ling Fei and the members of the security team, but also the hundreds of ordinary civilians from the Sky Eagle base were all stunned. Captain Ling Fei is an ant? Keep in mind that Captain Ling Fei is a 5th-tier evolved being. "How do you dare to call me an ant?" Ling Fei said coldly. "Isn't that what you are?" Yili said indifferently. Ling Fei, the captain of the Sky Eagle base's security team, had never been called an ant by anyone before. Yet today someone had referred to her as an ant, and she couldn't help but be angry. "You're seeking death. How dare he call our captain an ant?" "That's right. He's just a genetic warrior who dares not reveal his true realm, yet he dares to speak so arrogantly in front of our captain? Captain, give this brat a lesson. Although he saved the civilians from our Sky Eagle base, it must have been for a purpose. Perhaps he's one of the followers of the fire-worshipping sect, performing this act to deceive us and infiltrate our base as a spy." The dozen or so members of the security team surrounding Ling Fei all started clamoring. They found Yili to be extremely arrogant and believed that if they didn't teach him a good lesson, he wouldn't understand the concept of respecting others. Chapter 259, I can defeat you without using my hands and feet. Ling Fei smirked coldly as she looked at Yili. "You've heard them. If you don't start telling the truth now, I'll have to give you a little lesson." Yili shook his head inwardly. An ant indeed, always unaware of their place. "You? Give me a lesson?" Yili said calmly. Someone like you probably can't discern my true level, but let me tell you, I'm a 5th-tier evolved being." Box novel. Calm, Ling Fei angrily shouted. Yili's previous words had her burning with rage. In her view, once Yili heard that she was a 5th-tier evolved being, he would surely be frightened beyond belief. However, to her surprise, Yili's face remained as calm as water, as if he hadn't even heard her. Hee. Yili smiled indifferently. "What are you laughing at?" Ling Fei gritted her teeth. Yili let out a faint sigh. "I'm just marveling at when 5th-tier evolved beings started using their levels to intimidate others. In my eyes, even 5th-tier evolved beings are nothing more than ants. How could you understand how vast the heavens and earth truly are?" Yili continued. Hearing this, fire erupted in Ling Fei's eyes. "Very well. Since a 5th-tier evolved being is considered an ant in your eyes, he'll show you a thing or two," Ling Fei said coldly. The dozen or so 4th-tier security team members clenched their fists tightly. Yili was too arrogant, daring to call a 5th-tier evolved being an ant. Did that mean they were even lower than ants? Watching this scene unfold, the people from the Sky Eagle base were all taken aback. Although they had just narrowly escaped with their lives, they couldn't resist the temptation of witnessing such a good show. Not watching it would be a sin. "If you're ready, I'm going to make my move." Ling Fei stared at Yili. However, just as Ling Fei was about to strike, Yili suddenly stopped her. "Wait." Ling Fei halted her steps, a smug expression on her delicate face. She thought Yili must be scared now. "A lowly ant like you dares to fight me? If I use my hands and feet, it wouldn't be in line with my style. How about this, I won't use my hands and feet at all," Yili said calmly. "What?" When Yili said this, Ling Fei and the others were instantly shocked and horrified. Not use his hands and feet at all? Was there really such an arrogant person in this world? They couldn't comprehend it. No matter how hard they tried, they really couldn't. The one most shocked of all was Ling Fei herself. She had thought that Yili would be scared and reveal his true purpose after hearing that she was a 5th-tier evolved being. However, she could never have imagined that Yili would say such words. "Are you really so arrogant as to think that you can defeat me without using your hands and feet?" Ling Fei said angrily. "Arrogant?" Yili smiled faintly. Do you think it's arrogance for me to defeat you without using my hands and feet? Ridiculous. Yi Li, the illustrious Demon King, an 8th-tier evolved being with the 3rd level of the Ancient Devil Tome, the SSS-level combat skill Primordial Demon Slash, and carrying 2 unparalleled divine artifacts, the Dragon-Slaying Blade and the Heavenly Tower, had 5 8th-tier zombies under his command. Such a person defeating a 5th-tier evolved being without using his hands and feet was considered arrogant? Very well. Ling Fei couldn't bear Yi Li's indifferent expression any longer. Since you've chosen not to use your hands and feet, he'll let you know today what absolute power means. Ling Fei said coldly. With that, she raised her palm and a red aura appeared above it. A red aura represented an S-rank genetic warrior. Chapter 260, The Utter Horror of Everyone, Ice Spike. Ling Fei shouted lightly as the red aura on her palm formed several ice spikes, launching towards Yi Li. The onlookers widened their eyes, afraid of missing out on the spectacle. They thought Yi Li would dodge, but they never expected him to stand still like a statue. Ling Fei was also surprised. She couldn't understand why Yi Li didn't dodge. Box novel. Could it be that her ice spike had scared him to the point of paralysis? But what everyone witnessed was beyond their wildest imagination. The terrifying ice spike struck Yi Li's body heavily. Yet Yi Li didn't budge a step, and there was not the slightest trace of injury on him. It was as if these frightening ice spikes were nothing more than tickles to him. How is this possible? Ling Fei widened her eyes in disbelief. Her ice spike was a B-ranked skill, yet it couldn't cause any harm to Yi Li? The onlookers gasped in shock, staring at Yi Li with their mouths agape. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Hee hee. Yi Li suddenly chuckled coldly. Use all your abilities. Don't let me defeat you so easily. As an 8th-tier evolved being, Yi Li had an incredibly strong defense, making attacks from a 5th-tier evolved being like Ling Fei completely ineffective. Ling Fei, clenching her teeth, raised her palm again and shouted, "Flame palm!" A burst of flames erupted from Ling Fei's palm. Yi Li remained unmoved in his original spot, his face still calm and serene. The onlookers widened their eyes even further, thinking that Yi Li couldn't possibly stand still this time. After all, this was fire. They had never guessed right from the beginning of this confrontation, but this time they finally got it right. Yi Li didn't move at all. The flame struck Yi Li's body but instantly disappeared. It's impossible. This can't be happening. Ling Fei couldn't help but exclaim. Her ice spike was ineffective, which was one thing, but now even her ranked flame palm had no effect on him. Why was even in level skill ineffective against him? Who was he? Who was he? Witnessing this, the onlookers were completely stunned. Even fire had no effect on him? Yi Li had just endured a combined assault of ice and fire from Ling Fei, and although she was considered nothing more than an ant in his eyes, her attack was quite impressive. It seems that you're done now. It's my turn. Yi Li said calmly to the astonished Ling Fei. The onlookers were surprised. Didn't Yi Li say he wouldn't use his hands and feet? Was he just joking earlier? Yi Li didn't pay any attention to the shocked expressions of the onlookers. He activated the Ancient Devil Tome, the 3rd level. In an instant, the entire cave was enveloped in a terrifying demonic aura. Just how horrifying was the demonic aura of the 3rd level of the Ancient Devil Tome? It could be imagined. Yi Li had held back. Otherwise, those ordinary people around him would have immediately exploded into pieces. Ling Fei's eyes widened. The aura was too frightening. Her heart was trembling, and her soul was shaking uncontrollably. The onlookers collapsed to the ground one after another, feeling as if they had descended into the depths of hell, enduring unspeakable torture that made them 100 times more painful. Yi Li looked at Ling Fei and calmly said, "Do you still think I'm arrogant for defeating you without using my hands and feet?" Chapter 261, Fire-worshipping sect. Ling Fei stared at Yi Li in horror, feeling her very soul trembling uncontrollably. Yi Li hadn't even made a move, yet his imposing aura was so overwhelming. Moreover, this aura was truly terrifying. She finally understood that she could never be Yi Li's match. Yi Li retracted the demonic aura from the 3rd level of the Ancient Devil Tome, his face still as calm as water. Box novel. Calm, do you want to continue? Yi Li asked calmly, looking at Ling Fei. Ling Fei was taken aback. She knew deep down that she could never be Yi Li's opponent. Even without using his hands and feet, he had already demonstrated his superiority. If he were to use his full power, she might not even be able to withstand a single blow. The members of the Sky Eagle base's guard team and the onlookers were all terrified as they watched Yili. They had thought it was impossible for Yili to defeat Captain Ling Fei without using his hands and feet, but now they not only realized they were wrong but also how thoroughly wrong they were. "Oh, by the way, how is your third leader?" Yili suddenly asked Ling Fei. That day Tian-Yi, the third leader of the Sky Eagle organization, fought against Bai Wawa and must have sustained considerable injuries. Yili needed to know if he was really seriously injured. Ling Fei was startled. The matter of the third leader of Sky Eagle, Tian-Yi, being injured hadn't been widely known. But this person seemed to know about it. As the captain of Sky Eagle's guard team, Ling Fei naturally knew how third leader got injured. He was injured by the Demon King Yi. Ling Fei suddenly jolted as if she had been electrocuted. The Demon King's name was Yi Li, and she was quite certain that the Demon King was named Yi Li. And the person in front of her was also named Yi Li. Could it be? At this thought, Ling Fei couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. The name Yi Li, she had heard of this woman before. The young lady of the Sky Eagle had mentioned this name to her, saying that the Demon King Yi Li had once saved her life. "When I ask a question, I usually expect an answer," Yi Li said, looking at Ling Fei, who was still in shock. Ling Fei finally snapped out of her daze. She looked at Yi Li with a horrified expression and said, The third leader was seriously injured, unconscious. The Grand Leader had to seek help from the Medicine God Hall, but they couldn't do anything about it." Although she was almost certain that the young man in front of her was the Demon King Yi Li, she didn't dare to say it out loud, fearing that she might provoke him. Even an 8th-tier evolved being like the third leader couldn't withstand the assault of Bai Wawa of the Apocalypse Legion, led by the Demon King Yi Li. She was no match for him at all. Yi Li smiled inwardly. He had originally thought that dealing with the Sky Eagle organization would be troublesome, but now it seemed that he had worried needlessly. "Let's go to the Sky Eagle base together," Yi Li said slowly. Ling Fei was taken aback. The Demon King Yi Li was going to the Sky Eagle base? She couldn't even fathom what his intentions might be, and she didn't dare to think too much about it. Yi Li looked at Ling Fei, who was hesitating, and smiled. "Never refuse me. Don't even try, okay?" Ling Fei was startled, and then a bitter smile appeared on her face. She realized that she had no choice but to comply with Yi Li's request. Even if the Demon King Yi Li went to the Sky Eagle base to prepare for something, the Sky Eagle base had nothing to fear. After all, their Grand Leader was a 9th-tier evolved being. "All right," Ling Fei said to Yi Li. Soon after, Yi Li and the others headed towards the Sky Eagle base. However, not long after leaving the cave, they were blocked by over 100 genetic warriors. Most of them were 3rd-tier evolved beings, and there was even one 4th-tier evolved being among them. They were all dressed in black robes with 3 large characters embroidered in rust on their robes. Fire-worshipping sect. Chapter 262. A man of unparalleled handsomeness. Over 100 genetic warriors from the fire-worshipping sect blocked the path of Yi Li and his group. A 4th-tier evolved being coldly looked at Ling Fei. "Ling Fei, we've received word that you would come to rescue these people, but it's a pity that we've already laid an ambush." Ling Fei looked solemnly at the 4th-tier evolved being. Although she was a 5th-tier evolved being, there were several hundred genetic warriors on the other side, making it impossible for them to win. She stole a glance at Yi Li and noticed that his face remained calm, without any signs of disturbance. While the Demon King Yi Li was incredibly powerful, they had no connection to him whatsoever. Box novel. You followers of the fire-worshipping sect abducted the people from our Sky Eagle base, and we haven't settled that score with you yet. It seems you've walked right into our hands, Ling Fei said coldly. Upon hearing this, the 4th-tier evolver burst into laughter. "Ling Fei, I don't think you've quite grasped the situation here. This isn't your Sky Eagle base. Right now, you're just a dozen or so people. Do you think you can survive?" The 4th-tier evolver wore a smug expression on his face. Ling Fei clenched her teeth and asked, "What do you want from us?" The 4th-tier evolved being sneered, "Ling Fei, we don't want to do anything except kill all of you." The people from the Sky Eagle base were terrified. They had just narrowly escaped danger, and now they were faced with another threat. "What do you think, Ling Fei? Shall we go over there and kill you, or would you like to come over here and let us kill you?" The 4th-tier evolved being taunted arrogantly. Ling Fei glanced at Yi Li once again but found that his expression remained unchanged. She wondered if she should ask for his help, but why would the Demon King Yi Li bother to assist her? For a moment, Ling Fei felt a sense of powerlessness. "Get out of the way, you ants. You're blocking my path." A carefree voice suddenly entered everyone's ears. All the fire-worshipping sect genetic warriors were stunned and quickly turned to look in the direction of the voice. What they saw left them in disbelief. They could never have imagined that there could be someone in the world so incredibly handsome. Yili's face was sharp and angular, with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes that no one could forget. His eyes were as serene as the night and as profound as the ocean. Standing among the crowd, Yili appeared like a phoenix among chickens or Angelica among weeds. The leader of these followers of the fire-worshipping sect, a fourth-tier evolved being, rubbed his eyes as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. How could someone be this good-looking? But then he was stunned. He not only didn't see it wrong but also noticed something else. Yili's eyes were full of killing intent and he looked awe-inspiring. He is not just handsome, he's also domineering. Yili stood there like an unsheathed sword, reaching for the sky. The fourth-tier evolved being composed himself and then frowned. When compared to the man in front of him, he felt utterly inferior. Do you know that being good-looking can sometimes lead to trouble? The fourth-tier evolved being glared at Yili and said coldly. Oh. A hint of playfulness appeared on Yili's face. The fourth-tier evolved being gritted his teeth. After a few seconds he added, especially for a man as stunningly handsome as you. Yili smiled faintly. He understood that this fourth-tier evolved being was simply feeling inferior due to his own looks. He could empathize with such feelings of inferiority. After all, in this post-apocalyptic world, who wouldn't feel inferior in front of someone like him, Yili? Chapter 263. Turn them into zombies. Yili didn't want to pay any attention to whether this fourth-tier evolutionist felt inferior or not. He calmly said, "Ants, move aside or the consequences will be severe." What? Both the fourth-tier evolutionist and the hundreds of genetic warriors were shocked. They never expected Yili to dare to say such words to them. Yili had said something similar before, but they were too focused on his appearance at the time. "Brat, don't you dare call us ants." The fourth-tier evolved being couldn't believe what he was hearing as he looked at Yili. Box novel. Calm. Yili smiled faintly. "Aren't you ants?" The fourth-tier evolved being and the genetic warriors of the fire-worshipping sect were infuriated by Yili's words. "Brat, you're arrogant." The fourth-tier evolved being stared at Yili, completely bewildered by where Yili found the courage to say such things. "They'll say it again, clear the path or the consequences will be severe." "I don't want to repeat myself for the third time," Yili said calmly. Ling Fei looked at Yili and she secretly breathed a sigh of relief. As long as the Demon King Yili was willing to take action, they would be safe. "What if I don't move aside?" the fourth-tier evolved being sneered. Yili smiled and couldn't understand why these ants dared to say such things to him. Didn't they understand the simple principle that they shouldn't mess with the wrong person? Without saying more, Yili released his Apocalypse Legion from the system space. Roar. Ada by Wawa Hongye Yutong and Swordmaster Achi. Their appearances were all different, but they shared one thing in common. Their eyes were all golden. "Turn them all into zombies," Yili said calmly. Following Yili's command, the Apocalypse Legion flew out like lightning. Among the hundreds of genetic warriors in the fire-worshipping sect, the strongest was only a fourth-tier evolved being, and there was no way they could withstand the attacks of 5 8th-tier zombies. In just a few seconds, all of the genetic warriors had been turned into zombies. Yili opened the synthesis grid in his mind and synthesized them into a third-tier male zombie. There was no choice. When genetic warriors turned into zombies, their ranks would definitely decrease. He checked the other zombies in the system space. 1 5th-tier female zombie and 1 3rd-tier male zombie. That was about it. He turned around slowly and found that everyone had frozen in place like statues. "Aren't you all shocked?" Yili looked at them and spoke slowly. Upon hearing his words, they snapped back to reality, looking at Yili in shock. "Never be surprised at me because everything I do will leave you astonished for 3 days and 3 nights, Yili continued. Ling Fei's face seemed to have frozen, and she stared at the Apocalypse Legion in shock. "Is this the Demon King Yili's Apocalypse Legion?" Ling Fei was filled with amazement. The members of the Sky Eagle Base's guard team were already scared out of wits. They had already guessed who Yili was, and they couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. They had been fortunate that the Demon King Yili hadn't killed them earlier, or they would have already gone to hell. "What did you see?" Yili looked at the people from the Sky Eagle Base and asked. They were taken aback and stammered, We saw." Before they could finish their sentence, Yili interrupted them. "You didn't see anything. If anyone dares to talk about what happened today, you know the consequences," Yili said slowly. Chapter 264. Met Ziqiang again. Upon hearing Yi Li's words, everyone closed their mouths tightly, afraid to make a sound that might displease Yi Li. Yi Li looked at Ling Fei. Let's go. Ling Fei quickly responded and led the group towards the Sky Eagle base. As expected, just as Yi Li had anticipated, the Sky Eagle organization was indeed similar to a small bustling city. While it might not have been as large in scale as the Annan Bay City or the Huangjiang Bay City, its overall strength was much greater. Access to the Sky Eagle base was strictly regulated and required a pass. However, as the captain of the Sky Eagle base's security team, Ling Fei naturally didn't need one. Box novel. After entering the Sky Eagle base, Yi Li found that it was quite impressive, resembling a bustling town. Patrol teams with laser guns would occasionally roam the streets, and the people wore contented smiles on their faces. Mr. Yi, would you like to go? Ling Fei cautiously looked at Yi Li and asked. Take me to see Tianyi, Yi Li said slowly. Since he had come to the eastern part of the Wilderness North Zone, there was no need to provoke the Sky Eagle organization unnecessarily. Just let bygones be bygones. Yi Li wasn't afraid of the Sky Eagle organization, but there was no need to create enmity either. Ling Fei had no idea what Yi Li was thinking. She looked puzzled and couldn't understand why the Demon King Yi Li wanted to meet with the third leader now. Currently, the third leader was still in a coma, and even the doctors from the Medicine God Hall couldn't heal him. However, Ling Fei didn't dare to question Yi Li's reasons. She knew that beings like the Demon King Yi Li usually didn't need any reasons for their actions. Mr. Yi, please follow me. Shortly after, Ling Fei led Yi Li to a certain place. Before long, Yi Li followed Ling Fei and arrived outside a grand hall. On the top of the hall were 4 golden characters, Sky Eagle Headquarters. Under the sunlight, these 4 golden characters appeared particularly dazzling. Mr. Yi, this is the Sky Eagle Headquarters and our third leader is currently recuperating inside, Ling Fei said to Yi Li. Yi Li nodded. Let's go in. Then Yi Li entered Sky Eagle Headquarters. Shortly after entering, Yi Li saw someone he recognized. It was a girl around his age with long purple hair, sitting in a pavilion and appearing somewhat melancholic. This girl was none other than Ziqiang, the girl Yi Li had rescued in the abandoned city. Ziqiang held her chin in her hand, and when she saw Ling Fei, her face immediately brightened with excitement. Ling Fei, you're finally back. I've been so bored, Ziqiang pouted. However, Ling Fei was in no mood to exchange playful banter with Ziqiang today, especially with the presence of the great Demon King Yi Li. Ling Fei feared that she might end up being killed by him. Ziqiang was taken aback and wondered why Ling Fei was ignoring her. Then a figure caught her eye. This figure seemed somewhat familiar. Ling Fei, who is he? Ziqiang asked curiously. He. Ling Fei didn't know how to answer. Ziqiang touched her head, wondering why her usually straightforward big sister Ling Fei was acting so hesitantly today. Since Ling Fei didn't respond, Ziqiang decided to ask the question herself. Hello, may I ask who you are? Ziqiang looked at Yi Li's figure and asked. As they say, all meetings in this world were reunions after a long separation. Yi Li turned around slowly. Chapter 265. Voluntarily walked into death. Ziqiang stared at Yi Li, her exquisite face seemingly frozen. After a moment, Ziqiang finally regained her senses. It feels like we've met somewhere before. Ziqiang's voice trembled uncontrollably. It's only been a year and you've forgotten your savior? Yi Li replied casually. Ling Fei had previously mentioned to Ziqiang the story of how the Demon King Yi Li had saved her in the ruined city. She stepped aside, not wanting to disturb their conversation. Box novel. Mr. Demon King, why have you come to the Sky Eagle base? Ziqiang said, her face turning slightly red. With her long waist-length purple hair, she looked incredibly adorable. Yi Li hadn't expected Ziqiang to have this kind of identity. It was quite interesting. I naturally have my reasons for coming, Yi Li replied slowly. Suddenly, Ziqiang remembered her third uncle Tianyi's situation. Her second uncle and third uncle had tried to subdue various major forces north of the Wilderness Northern region but had been defeated by the Demon King Yi Li's Apocalypse Legion. However, this was the territory of the Sky Eagle base. With her third uncle severely injured and unconscious, wouldn't Yi Li be voluntarily walking into his death? On one side was her third uncle and on the other side was her savior. For a moment, Ziqiang felt at a loss for what to do. Mr. Demon King, you should leave. Right now, my father and second uncle consider you an enemy. If you come here, Ziqiang's words were interrupted as a deep voice echoed in everyone's ears. Ling Fei, you're back. The speaker was a middle-aged man dressed in a black suit. His face bore an air of authority, and his complexion was a pale gold. Ling Fei quickly responded, yes, second leader. We've successfully rescued several hundred people who were captured by the fire-worshipping sect. The middle-aged man was none other than the Sky Eagle organization's second leader, Jiang Feng, an 8th-tier evolved being. Jiang Feng nodded and suddenly turned his gaze towards Yi Li. Then he was scared out of wits. Yi Li. Jiang Feng was incredibly shocked and felt like he must be seeing things. How could Yi Li possibly be here? No matter how many times he blinked, Yi Li was still standing right in front of him, looking indifferent. Yi Li, it really is you. Your Apocalypse Legion's zombies severely injured my third brother, causing him to remain in a coma to this day. We didn't expect you to come here voluntarily. Jiang Feng stared at Yi Li coldly. Yi Li remained silent, his expression unchanged, as if he regarded Jiang Feng as insignificant. Surround him. This man is Yi Li, the Demon King. Jiang Feng ordered, and instantly hundreds of genetic warriors rushed forward. They held specially designed laser guns, which were much more powerful than those of genetic warriors at the same level. Go inform my eldest brother and the elders, Jiang Feng instructed a 5th-tier evolved being. Yes, second leader. The 5th-tier evolved being hurriedly ran inside to report. Ling Fei naturally knew that this would be the outcome. Until now, she still didn't understand why Yi Li had come to the Sky Eagle base. Ziqiang watched Yi Li surrounded and her little face filled with worry. But what could she do? After all, it was the Iron Feet zombie by Wawa from the Apocalypse Legion who had injured her third uncle. Soon, the Sky Eagle organization's grand leader, accompanied by the 10 elders, emerged from the main hall. Chapter 266. Don't you want Tianyi to survive? The grand leader of the Sky Eagle organization was named Zishan, a 9th-tier evolved being. The 10 elders following him were all 7th-tier evolved beings. Their power far surpassed that of Annan Base City and Huangjiang Base City. Big brother, this is Yi Li. Jiang Feng pointed at Yi Li. Upon hearing this, Zishan's expression grew cold. He scrutinized Yi Li and asked, Are you Demon King Yi Li? Box novel. Calm, that's right. Yi Li nodded, his face as calm as ever. Zishan looked at Yi Li's indifferent expression and sneered, Demon King Yi Li, I must commend your courage. You're facing so many of us, yet your face remains unmoved. Yi Li, however, merely smiled faintly. I heard that your third leader suffered severe injuries and is now in a coma. I came here just to take a look. Is it necessary to make such a fuss? These words angered everyone present. The reason Tianyi suffered such injuries and fell into a coma was that he was injured by a member of your Apocalypse Legion, the Iron-Footed Zombie. And now you Yi Li dare to say such things? Arrogant fool. Zishan angrily shouted. Zishan was a 9th-tier evolved being, while Yi Li was an 8th-tier evolved being. There was a huge gap between the two. However, Yi Li didn't come to the Sky Eagle base to engage in a full-blown battle. If negotiations failed, he could simply run away. The gap between an 8th-tier and a 9th-tier evolved being was too vast. The differences in power between each tier of evolved beings were unimaginable. But Yi Li was confident that he could escape if needed, thanks to his S-tier ability, Swift Steps. Yi Li, don't you know that you're about to die? Zishan coldly stared at Yi Li. He couldn't understand why Yi Li remained so calm. Dad. Ziqiang suddenly called out to Zishan. Before Zishan could respond, Ziqiang continued, Didn't you ask me how I escaped from the abandoned city? Actually, it was Senior Demon King who saved me. Can't you? Ziqiang didn't finish her sentence, but her meaning was clear. Ziqiang had only told Ling Fei about Yi Li saving her in the abandoned city. Although Bai Wawa, the iron-footed zombie from Yi Li's Apocalypse Legion, had severely injured her third uncle, she didn't want anything to happen to Yi Li. Zishan was taken aback by her words. He would never have imagined that Yi Li was the one who had saved his daughter. Big brother, even if Yi Li saved little Qiong, what does that represent? Didn't you hear what he said earlier? It's obvious that he came here to mock our Eagle organization. Jiang Feng argued. Yi Li, I admit that I can't defeat you, but this is the Sky Eagle base. Today you have nowhere to escape. Zishan declared. I heard that you are neither human nor a member of the dark race. I've encountered many humans and members of the dark race, but I've never seen anything like you, who is neither human nor dark race member. Jiang Feng said angrily, letting out his pent-up frustration. Yi Li, on the other hand, smiled faintly. He ignored Jiang Feng and turned to look at Zishan. I believe you don't want Tianyi to die, right? Yi Li said slowly. Zishan was taken aback and hurriedly asked, Yi Li, what do you mean by that? Yi Li smiled faintly. It's nothing special, just that aside from me no one else can save him. After hearing this, everyone present was petrified. Chapter 267. The Medicine God Hall and Miracle Physician Qi Zishan continued to stare at Yi Li, unable to understand why Yi Li dared to speak in such a manner. Yi Li, what exactly do you mean? Zishan asked. Zishan actually admired Yi Li's audacity a bit. To remain calm in the face of such overwhelming opposition took incredible courage. I've already said it. Aside from me, Yi Li, no one can save Tianyi, Yi Li calmly replied. The Sky Eagle organization's second leader sneered. Yi Li, do you think you're a god? Old 3 can be saved by the Medicine God Hall's miracle physicians. What are you compared to them? Box novel. Calm. Yi Li smiled faintly. Can the quacks from the Medicine God Hall compare to me? Arrogant, absolutely arrogant. In the eyes of the onlookers, Yi Li's arrogance knew no bounds. Unfortunately, Yi Li didn't see it that way. He had seen doctors from the Medicine God Hall before, in Annan Bay City and Huangjiang Bay City. When Jiang Feng heard Yi Li's words, he was furious and was about to say some harsh words to Yi Li. However, a voice suddenly reached everyone's ears. Who dares to say that the physicians of our Medicine God Hall are quacks? Everyone quickly turned their heads and saw an elderly man in his 60s slowly approaching. Although the old man was only a third-tier evolved being, he had a graceful and dignified appearance. The people of the Medicine God Hall dedicated their lives to the study of medicine, so their cultivation realm was not high. However, the Medicine God Hall was an absolute force to be reckoned with because they had good relations with all major powers. Dr. Qi, Zishan called out to the elderly man. Dr. Qi, he said that the doctors of your Medicine God Hall are all quacks, Jiang Feng said, fearing that the elderly man didn't know. Dr. Qi looked at Yi Li. After a few seconds, he smiled coldly and asked, Did you say that all of us in the Medicine God Hall are quacks? Everyone turned their attention to Yi Li, eager to hear how he would respond. Yi Li's lips curled up slightly, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Isn't that the case? Yi Li calmly replied. With this statement, the atmosphere instantly grew quiet. No one could have imagined that Yi Li would say such a thing when faced with the miracle physicians of the Medicine God Hall. You brat, you're asking for death. Dr. Qi gritted his teeth. However, Yi Li merely smiled faintly. Do you, a lowly third-tier evolved being, think you can kill me? Nowadays, if Yi Li wanted to kill a third-tier evolved being, it was 100 times easier than crushing an ant. Demon King Yi Li, how dare you speak to Dr. Qi in such a manner? Do you really think there's no one left in our Sky Eagle organization? Jiang Feng coldly retorted. He still vividly remembered the terror he felt when Yi Li used his heavenly spirit eyes outside the flame base. The enmity and hatred between him and Yi Li ran deep. I truly admire you. A young man like you dares to claim that all of us in the Medicine God Hall are quacks. I really want to know on what basis you're saying this. Dr. Qi's old face suddenly displayed a playful look. He thought that Yi Li was merely talking big and had no real substance to his claims. Unfortunately, Dr. Qi couldn't have anticipated how Yi Li would respond to his question. You can't even cure Tianyi, aren't you a quack? Yi Li said casually. Dr. Qi's expression turned cold. Do you know how severe Tianyi's injuries are? Chapter 268. Are Tianyi's injuries severe? Dr. Qi looked at Yi Li with disdain, seeing him as someone who didn't understand anything and just liked to boast. Are Tianyi's injuries severe? Yi Li asked Dr. Qi calmly. Dr. Qi snorted. If third leader's injuries weren't serious, would I be helpless? That's just a problem with your medical skills. If it were me, Yi Li, I could heal Tianyi in an instant, Yi Li replied calmly. Box novel. Calm. With these words, everyone became furious. Even the miracle physicians of the Medicine God Hall were powerless, so what gave Yi Li the audacity to make such claims? Moreover, Yi Li was the one responsible for Tianyi's injuries in the first place. How dare he be so shameless? When Dr. Qi heard Yi Li's words, he felt insulted like never before. Yi Li, you. Dr. Qi was so angry that he couldn't even complete a sentence. With a calm expression on his face, Yi Li said, Today I am in a good mood, so I'll let you witness my medical skills. As he spoke, Yi Li prepared to move forward. However, Jiang Feng blocked Yi Li's path and looked at him coldly. Yi Li, don't pretend to be a good person. How did my third brother get injured? Dad, I think we should let Senior Demon King give it a try. Ziqiang whispered as she tugged at Zishan's sleeve. Zishan contemplated for a few seconds. He thought that maybe Yi Li had come not to save his third brother but to kill him. However, if that was the case, wasn't Yi Li committing suicide? Since Dr. Qi was helpless anyway, he might as well take a chance. With him by the side, there was no way Yi Li could harm his third brother. Yi Li, can you really save my third brother? Zishan asked Yi Li with a probing look. Yi Li smiled calmly and slowly replied, not only can I save him, I can make him recover instantly. Although Zishan thought Yi Li was extremely arrogant, the calmness and confidence on Yi Li's face surprised him. Very well. I'll trust you this time, Zishan said. Mr. Z, how can you? Dr. Qi was astonished. He never imagined that Zishan would agree to let Yi Li try. Dr. Qi, right now my third brother's life is in imminent danger, so... Zishan's words were left unfinished, but the meaning was clear. Mr. Z, you're showing disrespect to our medicine god hall by letting a brat treat third leader's injuries. Zishan was annoyed. He thought, if your medicine god hall can heal my third brother's injuries, why would I let Yi Li do it? Old man, do you always talk so much nonsense? Yi Li suddenly asked. When Dr. Qi heard this, he was infuriated beyond measure, and his old face was filled with anger. Fine, fine. Let me see your medical skills. Dr. Qi said coldly. Yi Li ignored Dr. Qi and looked at Zishan. Lead the way. Seeing Yi Li giving orders to the leader, everyone's anger intensified. Zishan frowned, but after looking at Yi Li for a few seconds, he led Yi Li to Tianyi's room. Dr. Qi followed with a gloomy expression. He wanted to see if Yi Li really had the ability to back up his words. A few minutes later, Yi Li arrived at Tianyi's room. Tianyi was currently unconscious, with a multitude of medical equipment on either side of his hospital bed. Chapter 269. It was Senior Demon King who saved you. Dr. Qi chuckled coldly. Yi Li, show us your astonishing medical skills. He wanted to see if Yi Li's skills matched his strong words. Yi Li smiled and said, I originally thought that the quacks of the medicine god hall had some extraordinary abilities. It turns out you rely on these ordinary medical instruments. Ha ha ha. Dr. Qi burst into laughter as if he had never heard anything so amusing. Box novel. Calm, Yi Li. Oh Yi Li, I thought you had some skills. Don't you know that medical instruments are necessary for treating injuries and illnesses? There was a mocking expression on Dr. Qi's old face, as if he looked down on Yi Li even more. Yi Li shook his head slowly. Indeed, you truly are quacks. If it were me, I wouldn't need medical instruments to save someone. What? What did you say? Dr. Qi was dumbfounded. Treating people without medical instruments? How was that possible? Were you going to use your head? Yi Li smiled to himself. He knew that doctors like Dr. Qi wouldn't understand his medical skills. Yi Li, please save my third brother quickly, Zishan said in a deep voice. Zishan wanted to see if Yi Li was planning to harm or save his third brother. He was also puzzled about how one could save someone without using medical instruments. When Yi Li heard this, he looked at Tianyi, who was lying unconscious on the bed. He slowly raised his palm, and a gentle golden spiritual light enveloped it. Immediately, the golden spiritual light slowly moved toward Tianyi. An SSS-level healing technique was impossible to use to bring someone back from the dead, but it was quite simple to heal a severely injured person. After a few seconds, a miracle occurred. Tianyi slowly opened his eyes. Third brother? Zishan and Jiang Feng called out to Tianyi when they saw him open his eyes. I didn't die? Tianyi touched his head as if it were utterly unbelievable. That's impossible. Absolutely impossible. Dr. Qi exclaimed. The severe injuries that had left him helpless had been casually healed? The 10 elders of the Sky Eagle organization in the room were also stunned. It was just too unbelievable. Not only had third leader's injuries been healed, but he also seemed full of energy and vitality. I told you I could treat injuries without medical instruments. Why didn't you believe that? Yi Li looked at Dr. Qi casually. At this point, Dr. Qi had no idea how to respond. He felt deeply ashamed and wished he could find a hole to hide in. But he was also shocked. He couldn't understand how such a miraculous medical skill could exist in this world. It was simply incredible. Tianyi moved his body a bit and realized he was completely fine. He then looked around at the people in the room. But what he saw shocked him to the core. Demon King Yi Li. Tiani jumped out of the hospital bed and shouted at Yi Li. He would rather believe that the sky was falling than believe that Yi Li would appear here. Set aside your prejudices towards your savior, Yi Li said calmly. Tiani was puzzled when he heard this. Third uncle, it was Senior Demon King who saved you, Ziqiang said sweetly with a smile. What? Tiani's eyes widened in shock. He couldn't have imagined that it was Yi Li who had saved him. Chapter 270. There's a high-level female zombie on the outskirts. Tian stared at Yi Li in disbelief. He had fought a fierce battle against the iron-footed zombie by Wawa outside the Blazefire base and had been seriously injured. Wasn't the iron-footed zombie part of the Apocalypse Legion? How could it be Yi Li who saved him? The second leader of the Sky Eagle organization was dumbfounded. His previous furious shouts at Yi Li now left him red-faced. He had never expected Yi Li to actually heal third leader so quickly. Box novel. Come Yi Li, now that you've healed third brother, let's consider our past grievances settled. What do you think? Zishan looked at Yi Li and suggested. Just as Zishan was watching intently, Yi Li used such a divine technique that he had to take Yi Li seriously. Yi Li replied, all right. He had come to the Sky Eagle base to resolve this matter in the first place. Otherwise, the Flame organization would have been annihilated by the Sky Eagle organization. Now that the issue had been resolved, Yi Li was looking forward to exploring the Falling Rock Mountain range with the Super Treasure map. As he was about to leave, Ziqiang stopped him. Senior Demon King, where are you going? Falling Rock Mountain range. Ziqiang was puzzled. The Falling Rock Mountain range wasn't far from the Sky Eagle base, but it was a forbidden zone for life. She couldn't understand why Yi Li would want to go there. Senior Demon King, can I go with you? Ziqiang asked cautiously, her eyes fixed on Yi Li. Ever since Yi Li had saved her in the ruined city, his presence had haunted her. She didn't understand why she felt this way. She had thought that she would never see Yi Li again in her lifetime, but now that she had, she didn't want to part with him so soon. Yi Li hadn't expected Ziqiang to make such a request, but he looked into her eyes with his usual calm gaze. He had seen that look in the eyes of many others before. Xiao Hui, Yun Man, Chen Ruxue, Lu Qingxue, Lu Qian, Luo Yu, all of them had looked at him with similar eyes. Without a doubt, Ziqiang had fallen for him. He wasn't surprised by this at all. After all, which girl wouldn't be attracted to him when she saw him? All right, Yi Li said. He had never been a good person or a bad person, but he had a good heart. Since Ziqiang had made such a request, there was no harm in agreeing to it. Thank you, Senior Demon King, Ziqiang said with joy. As Yi Li was about to leave, Zishan stopped him. Demon King, are you planning to go to the Falling Rock Mountain range? Zishan asked. Yi Li nodded. Is there something wrong with that? Recently, there's a high-level female zombie on the outskirts of the Falling Rock Mountain range. None of the adventurers who went there have returned. Zishan said. A high-level female zombie? Yi Li smiled inwardly. Could this be the opportunity he was waiting for? The 5 zombies of the Apocalypse Legion were all 8th-tier zombies now. It was time to cultivate a new one. Demon King, your strength is something I'm not worried about, but if Chong'er goes with you. Zishan didn't finish his sentence, but his meaning was clear. He was worried about Ziqiang going with Yi Li. Dad, just let me go with Demon King. He's so powerful, why would he be afraid of a high-level female zombie? Ziqiang pleaded with her father. Zishan looked into Ziqiang's imploring eyes for a few seconds before shaking his head helplessly. All right. Chapter 271. The young master of the fire-worshipping sect, seeing that Zishan had agreed, Ziqiang was excited. Then she and Yi Li headed for the Falling Rock Mountain range. The Falling Rock Mountain range wasn't far from the Sky Eagle base, and before long the two of them reached its outskirts. Yi Li had been here with Luo Yu before, where they had encountered a giant centipede. Box novel. Come, Senior Demon King, are you coming to the Falling Rock Mountain range for that high-level female zombie? Ziqiang asked curiously. Yi Li didn't answer, instead using his heavenly spirit eyes to scan their surroundings. Roar, roar. Suddenly, a familiar sound that Yi Li recognized well resounded. Hundreds of zombies rushed towards them recklessly. Yi Li raised his finger, and the golden spiritual light on his fingertips swept out like a machine gun, shooting at the approaching zombies. Swish, swish, swish. These hundreds of zombies couldn't get close to Yi Li. Their legs were all pierced by bullet-like holes, rendering them powerless. 2 level 1 zombies could be synthesized into a level 2 zombie. Two level 2 zombies could be synthesized into one level 3 zombie. All of these zombies were level 3, so Yili combined them into one level 9 male zombie and one level 9 female zombie. Yili looked bored. A level 9 zombie was too weak. But Ziqiang didn't look bored at all. On the contrary, she was extremely shocked. These zombies had transformed into two zombies? Ziqiang was only a tier 3 evolved being. She wasn't afraid of these low-level zombies, but this was unbelievable. The scene where Yili raised a single finger and instantly caused hundreds of zombies to fall to the ground left her astonished, despite her already being terrified of Yili. However, she was still shocked by this sight. But why did these zombies transform into a male zombie and a female zombie? Moreover, they seemed to become much stronger. Suddenly, Ziqiang remembered Yili's title. The Demon King. Yili. He was neither a human nor a member of the dark race, but a demon. Ziqiang thought that maybe this was the ability of a demon. Haha, this is truly like finding something unexpectedly without any effort. A sudden sneer reached Yili's ears. Yili turned around slowly and found a young man about his age, a 4th-tier evolved being, standing before him. The young man was dressed in a black robe with 3 large characters on it, Fire-Worshipping Sect. Behind him were dozens of genetic warriors, all 3rd-tier evolved beings. Zhao Yang? Ziqiang said in shock. Zhao Yang gave a cold smile. I didn't expect to encounter the daughter of the Sky Eagle organization's leader here. Should I consider myself lucky or very lucky? Zhao Yang was the young master of the Fire-Worshipping Sect, a powerful super-faction located east of the Wilderness North region. They specialized in researching drugs to enhance human genetic potential and make a fortune from it. These drugs forcibly improved the genes of the human body and were extremely destructive. As long as one used them, their lifespan would plummet by decades. In human-based cities, these drugs were absolutely forbidden. However, if some ordinary people wanted to become genetic warriors, they had to use them even if their lifespan would plummet. Recently, the Fire-Worshipping Sect had been researching a new drug, which was why they were aggressively capturing ordinary people in the Wilderness North region. Miss Ziqiang, will you come with me willingly, or do I need to take action myself? Zhao Yang looked at Ziqiang and said. As long as he used Ziqiang as a hostage, the Fire-Worshipping Sect could gain numerous benefits from the Sky Eagle organization, especially since Zishan cherished his daughter dearly. Wanna gift the story? Try 1. Comment 0 Comment 0 Vote 2 Left KJ Send Gift Chapter 272. Insignificant ant, come and let me kill you. Ziqiang became a little anxious when she heard Zhao Yang's words. She quickly glanced at Yili only to find him remain calm and composed. She thought she was being useless. With Senior Demon King by her side, why should she fear someone as insignificant as Zhao Yang? Zhao Yang, I advise you to leave quickly, or you will be in mortal danger, Ziqiang said to Zhao Yang. Zhao Yang was momentarily stunned, not understanding why Ziqiang would say such a thing. Then he realized. Ziqiang wasn't alone, there was a young man with her. This young man. Zhao Yang looked at Yili and felt an overwhelming sense of jealousy. He was considered quite handsome himself, but when compared to the young man before him, it was like night and day. A cold, dark look appeared on Zhao Yang's face as he thought to himself, what's the use of being exceptionally handsome? In the end he will just be a corpse. I think Ziqiang has the confidence to say this because of you, isn't that right? Zhao Yang stared at Yili. Perhaps, Yili replied calmly. Zhao Yang stared intently at Yili's calm face and couldn't understand how he could remain so composed. Didn't he know that he was about to die? I don't like your face, Zhao Yang said coldly, gazing at Yili. Do you know what happens to people I don't like? They die, Yili replied calmly. Since you know you're going to die, why are you so calm? Zhao Yang couldn't fathom why Yili could maintain such composure. Yili smiled faintly. Is this how insignificant beings like you usually speak? Chapter 272. Insignificant ant, come and let me kill you. Ziqiang became a little anxious when she heard Zhao Yang's words. She quickly glanced at Yili only to find him remain calm and composed. She thought she was being useless. With Senior Demon King by her side, why should she fear someone as insignificant as Zhao Yang? Zhao Yang, I advise you to leave quickly, or you will be in mortal danger, Ziqiang said to Zhao Yang. Zhao Yang was momentarily stunned, not understanding why Ziqiang would say such a thing. Then he realized. Box novel. Calm. Ziqiang wasn't alone, there was a young man with her. This young man. Zhao Yang looked at Yili and felt an overwhelming sense of jealousy. He was considered quite handsome himself, but when compared to the young man before him, it was like night and day. A cold, dark look appeared on Zhao Yang's face as he thought to himself, what's the use of being exceptionally handsome? In the end he will just be a corpse. I think Ziqiang has the confidence to say this because of you, isn't that right? Zhao Yang stared at Yi Li. Perhaps, Yi Li replied calmly. Zhao Yang stared intently at Yi Li's calm face and couldn't understand how he could remain so composed. Didn't he know that he was about to die? I don't like your face, Zhao Yang said coldly, gazing at Yi Li. Do you know what happens to people I don't like? They die, Yi Li replied calmly. Since you know you're going to die, why are you so calm? Zhao Yang couldn't fathom why Yi Li could maintain such composure. Yi Li smiled faintly. Is this how insignificant beings like you usually speak? What? Both Zhao Yang and the dozen or so genetic warriors from the fire-worshipping sect were stunned. He actually called our young master insignificant? With that comment, Zhao Yang's somewhat handsome face turned ice-cold. He never expected Yi Li to be so arrogant, not only in demeanor but also in words. It's the first time in my life that someone has called me insignificant from birth to now. You have quite the audacity and I must say I'm impressed. Insignificant ant, come and let me kill you. Yi Li looked at Zhao Yang and spoke calmly. His face remained as serene as ever, as if being killed by him was a great honor for Zhao Yang. Since you're so eager to die, I'll grant your wish. Kill him. Zhao Yang was so infuriated that he felt an itching sensation in his teeth. He had never encountered someone so arrogant before. With his command, more than a dozen third-tier evolved beings from the fire-worshipping sect charged at Yi Li. Zhao Yang sneered, believing that Yi Li was already dead meat. Then he could capture Ziqiang and use her as leverage against the Sky Eagle organization. Yi Li watched as more than a dozen third-tier evolved beings rushed toward him, wondering why there were so many people in this world who weren't afraid of death. Was life truly that undesirable? He activated his heavenly spirit eyes, and dozens of golden lights shot out from his eyes in an instant. The dozen or so third-tier evolved beings were horrified when they saw these terrifying golden lights. They panicked and tried to dodge, but it was too late. Ah! After a shrill scream, all of the third-tier evolved beings lay on the ground, dead. How is this possible? Zhao Yang stared in horror at the bodies of more than a dozen fire-worshipping sect genetic warriors on the ground. Ziqiang was also shocked. Earlier, Yi Li had knocked down over 100 zombies with a single flick of his finger, which had amazed her. Now, he had instantly killed more than a dozen third-tier evolved beings with his eyes alone? She was also a third-tier evolved being, so did this mean that she could be killed with just a glance in the eyes of Senior Demon Lord? Chapter 273, discovered the high-level female zombie. Zhao Yang was utterly terrified, his body trembling, his courage shattered. He never could have imagined that over a dozen third-tier evolved beings would be killed with just a glance. He now felt as if all the strength had been drained from his body, leaving him limp on the ground. You. Zhao Yang looked at Yi Li in horror. Yi Li gazed at Zhao Yang with indifference. Now that I, Yi Li, intend to kill you, understood? As these words left Yi Li's lips, Zhao Yang felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His legs trembled and he involuntarily urinated. No, you can't kill me. I am the young master of the fire-worshipping sect. We are the supreme power in the wilderness northern region. If you kill me, you will definitely die too. Zhao Yang tried to use the fire-worshipping sect to threaten Yi Li, but his plan was flawed. In this world there is no one I, the Demon King Yi Li, dare not kill. Yi Li said with a faint smile. The Demon King? Yi Li? Zhao Yang had naturally heard of the Demon King Yi Li, and now he finally realized the kind of existence he had provoked. Go to hell. With that, a blood-curdling hole appeared on Zhao Yang's forehead before he could even beg for mercy. Ziqiang stared in horror at Yi Li. Killing someone seemed insignificant to him. This person was truly terrifying. Senior Demon King Zhao Yang is the young master of the fire-worshipping sect. You killed him. There may be trouble for you. Ziqiang said to Yi Li. Yi Li chuckled. Trouble? A small fire-worshipping sect thinks it can be trouble for me? He wasn't concerned about the fire-worshipping sect discovering that he had killed Zhao Yang because he was unafraid. Quite the opposite, he was looking forward to it. Powers like the fire-worshipping sect usually preserve the life flames of their important figures. Once the life flame were extinguished, it meant the person was dead. Yi Li had come to the Falling Stone Mountains not to kill some insignificant pests, but to find the high-level female zombie that was still missing. He used his heavenly spirit eyes once more to scan the surroundings but found no trace of the high-level female zombie. Then he continued to move forward. This high-level female zombie on the outskirts would be his newly cultivated zombie. After he walked for over 10 minutes, another wave of zombies approached him. There were hundreds of these zombies, all of them third-level zombies. Seeing Yili and Ziqiong, these zombies rushed towards them with the hunger of starving people who hadn't eaten for 10 days. Yili used the one young finger to render these zombies powerless. He then opened the synthesis grid in his mind and combined these zombies into a level 9 male zombie, a level 10 male zombie, a level 9 female zombie, and a level 10 female zombie. He already had a level 9 male zombie and a level 9 female zombie. By synthesizing them into level 10, he could continue to synthesize the level 10 male zombie and the level 10 female zombie. This resulted in a tier 1 male zombie and a tier 1 female zombie. Yili's face remained emotionless. This had no significance. He needed to find the high-level female zombie. He used his heavenly spirit eyes to scan the area once again, and this time he finally spotted the high-level female zombie. He quickly headed in that direction with Ziqiong following closely behind. After a short while, Yili saw the high-level female zombie. This female zombie was a purple-eyed zombie. This meant that she was a tier 6 zombie. Yili's face lit up with excitement. He had never encountered such a high-level zombie before. However, this high-level female zombie was currently besieged by a group of high-level dark race members, and a fierce battle was about to erupt. Chapter 274. Bone Maiden. Dozens of Tier 5 dark race members surrounded the Tier 6 female zombie. These dark race members were all heavy sword-wielding undead, and they stared coldly at the Tier 6 female zombie, as if they had just been through a great battle. Bone Maiden, you dare to run out from the inner circle. Have you stopped listening to your master? One of the heavy sword-wielding undead stared at the Tier 6 zombie. The Tier 6 female zombie smiled coldly. I have already broken free from his control. From now on I am my own master. Yili and Ziqiong watched from the sidelines. A Tier 6 zombie speaking human language was not surprising to them. Bone Maiden, since you insist on not going back with us, then we'll have to take action. As the words fell, more than 30 Tier 5 heavy sword-wielding undead prepared to attack. Although it was a Tier 6 female zombie, there was no chance of victory against over 30 Tier 5 dark race members. Bone Maiden was forced back step by these 30-plus Tier 5 heavy sword-wielding undead, and she was becoming increasingly overwhelmed. Yili smiled. If he didn't intervene now, this Tier 6 female zombie might not survive. Wait here, Yili said to Ziqiong. Before Ziqiong could respond, Yili activated his swift steps and disappeared from the spot. Bone Maiden was already cornered by more than 30 Tier 5 heavy sword-wielding undead. Bone Maiden, goodbye, one of the Tier 5 heavy sword-wielding undead said with a cold smile. As the words fell, more than 30 Tier 5 heavy sword-wielding undead prepared to continue their siege on Bone Maiden. Just as the situation was about to become dire, Yili appeared next to Bone Maiden. Bone Maiden was taken aback. She never could have dreamed that a young man would suddenly appear in front of her at this moment. The 30-plus Tier 5 heavy sword-wielding undead also came to an abrupt halt when they saw this. Human. One of the Tier 5 heavy sword-wielding undead stared at Yili. The 30-plus Tier 5 heavy sword-wielding undead were all astonished. They couldn't understand how this human had appeared. You can leave now. Yili looked at the over 30 Tier 5 heavy sword-wielding undead and said indifferently. One of the Tier 5 heavy sword-wielding undead stared at Yili and asked, Human, do you want to save Bone Maiden? Yili smiled faintly. Could these dark race members not understand his words? Till say it again, you can leave now. Don't make me say it a third time, Yili said slowly. Upon hearing this, the 30-plus Tier 5 heavy sword-wielding undead were all startled. A human wanted to save a zombie? They had never seen or heard of such a scenario before. Hee hee. One of the Tier 5 heavy sword-wielding undead suddenly laughed coldly. Human, you could have lived quite well. You really shouldn't have appeared here. Don't you know you're about to die? Yili shook his head slightly. He didn't want to waste words with these Tier 5 heavy sword-wielding undead. He took out the dragon-slaying blade from his system space and instantly, a dragon's roar echoed, followed by the sound of sharp blades. The 30-plus Tier 5 heavy sword-wielding undead were taken aback. They stared at the gleaming blade in Yili's hand, but before they could get a good look, Yili had already raised the dragon-slaying knife. Flame blade technique. As soon as the words were spoken, the blade was released. Instantly, countless blades of fire rushed towards the 30-plus Tier 5 heavy sword-wielding undead. There was no chance for the undead to resist such a devastating attack. In their final moments, their eyes widened, and their pupils were filled with blades of fire. The blades of fire devoured all of the 30-plus Tier 5 heavy sword-wielding undead. Chapter 275. The Bone Maidens. Past Ziqiang watched this scene from the side, her exquisite little face full of shock. She remembered what happened in the abandoned city, and she naturally knew that the knife in Yi Li's hand was the dragon-slaying blade. Besides, she also knew that Senior Demon King not only had the dragon-slaying blade, but also had the Heavenly Tower, which was also one of the 10 great divine weapons. At this time, more than 35th tier heavy sword-wielding undeads had been burnt to ashes, and Yi Li's handsome face looked quite bored. It was as if instantly killing more than 35th tier heavy sword-wielding undead was a trivial matter for him. Yi Li put the dragon-slaying blade back into the system space and slowly turned around to look at the 6th tier female zombie in front of him. As long as a zombie reached the 6th tier, the signs of decomposition on its face would almost disappear. This 6th tier female zombie was undoubtedly very beautiful, even stunning, but at the moment she was covered in dirt and her clothes were tattered. "They all called you Bone Maiden just now. Is that your name?" Yi Li asked casually. The Bone Maiden's face was very cold, and there was no emotion in her purple eyes. She looked at Yi Li without any fear and said, "Cut the crap. Kill me." Yi Li was slightly stunned. He didn't expect this 6th tier female zombie to have such a bad temper. He didn't say that he wanted to kill her. "Are you willing to follow me?" Yi Li looked at the Bone Maiden. The Bone Maiden was a little stunned. She looked at Yi Li in shock, not expecting Yi Li to say such a thing. Suddenly she sensed the aura on Yi Li, which didn't feel like the human aura or the aura of a member of the dark race. "You are very strange." Bone Maiden stared at Yi Li and said coldly, "You haven't answered my question." Yi Li said lightly. The Bone Maiden sneered. "Why should one follow you?" Yi Li pondered for a few seconds and then looked at the Bone Maiden and replied, "I can give you anything you want." The Bone Maiden was stunned again. Looking at the confidence on Yi Li's face, she actually had a feeling that she had to believe him. "If you can avenge me, I will follow you," the Bone Maiden said to Yi Li. "Tell me your story," Yi Li said slowly. He had never been a person who would make others submit by force. Since this Bone Maiden still had a grudge, he might as well avenge her. Then the Bone Maiden told Yi Li about her encounter. Bone Maiden was one of the guardians of the fire-worshipping sect. She had always objected to the fire-worshipping sect's research on medicines that could improve the human genes, which attracted the dissatisfaction of a large number of people in the sect. The master of the fire-worshipping sect actually refined her into a zombie and then made her keep swallowing zombies, becoming a 6th-tier zombie. In the end, the fire-worshipping sect master gave her to a powerful dark race member in the inner area of the Falling Rock Mountain range. She was originally controlled by the powerful dark race member and lost her memories, but one day she accidentally drank a strange water and her memories were all restored. While the powerful member of the dark race wasn't paying attention, she escaped. Yi Li thought that this encounter was enough to make people sympathize with her. Fire-worshipping sect? He had just killed Zhao Yang, the young master of the fire-worshipping sect. There would be a battle with the fire-worshipping sect sooner or later, which could solve the matter of the Bone Maiden. Yi Li looked into the Bone Maiden's eyes. He felt that the Bone Maiden must have been a kind person before. After swallowing so many zombies, she still wasn't very ferocious. "Hee, do you still dare to make me follow you?" The Bone Maiden looked at Yi Li in disdain. Yi Li nodded slightly and looked at the sun in the sky. "Is the leader of the fire-worshipping sect very strong?" Chapter 276. Drinking the Zombie Loyalty Elixir, a 9th-tier evolved being. Bone Maiden stared at Yi Li. Bone Maiden thought that after Yi Li knew the fire-worshipping sect's leader was a 9th-tier evolved being, he would be frightened, but to her surprise, Yi Li's expression remained unchanged. The leader of the Sky Eagle organization, Lan Shan, was also a 9th-tier evolved being. Since the fire-worshipping sect could confront the Sky Eagle organization, it meant that the fire-worshipping sect had strength comparable to the Sky Eagle organization. Yi Li had already guessed that the leader of the fire-worshipping sect was a 9th-tier evolved being. "I might not be able to help you seek revenge right away, so promise to follow me first," Yi Li said slowly. Bone Maiden looked at Yi Li coldly. Although Yi Li had displayed terrifying strength just now, facing the massive fire-worshipping sect would be like an egg striking a rock. As one said before, one will follow you if you can help me seek revenge. Bone Maiden said coldly. When Yili had encountered Yutong at the West Mountain Burial Mound, he had purchased the zombie loyalty elixir in the Points Mall. After drinking it, a zombie would become 100% loyal. Yili thought that since her memories wouldn't change after drinking it, he could help her seek revenge later. You don't have the power to refuse me right now, Yili said slowly. With that, Yili spent 10,000 points in the Points Mall to purchase a zombie loyalty elixir. Drink it. Yili handed the zombie loyalty elixir to Bone Maiden. Bone Maiden looked at the elixir in Yili's hand, and her expression grew even colder. It was clear that she didn't want to have anything to do with Yili. Seeing that Bone Maiden refused to take the elixir, Yili was about to say something when Ziqiang approached. Senior Demon King. After calling out to the Demon King, Ziqiang looked at Bone Maiden. With just one look, Ziqiang took 3 steps back in shock. A 6th-tier purple eye zombie? While watching from the sidelines, Ziqiang had heard about the recent high-level female zombie in the outer region of the Falling Stone Mountain Range. However, she had never expected it to be a 6th-level zombie. Once zombies reached the 6th tier, they were almost completely indifferent to humans. It was not like the level 1 to level 10 zombies that would attack humans as food. Yili paid no attention to Ziqiang and continued to look at Bone Maiden. Drink it. One don't want to say it a third time, Yili said slowly. Bone Maiden's stunningly beautiful face grew colder. She still had no intention of accepting the zombie loyalty elixir from Yili. Take it. Although I don't know what this is, Senior Demon King won't harm you, Ziqiang blinked and said to Bone Maiden. Bone Maiden was taken aback by Ziqiang's words. Why wasn't this 3rd-tier evolved being girl afraid of a 6th-tier zombie like her? You're just a 6th-tier zombie. In Senior Demon King's Apocalypse Legion, there are 5 zombies that are all 8th-tier zombies. Then, Ziqiang explained the Apocalypse Legion's zombies to Bone Maiden. There was the Divine Fist zombie, Ada the Ironfoot zombie, Bai Wawa the Ice zombie, Hongya the Petrification zombie, Yutong, and the Ghost Sword zombie, Swordsman Achi. Although Bone Maiden had a cold and unfeeling personality, hearing Ziqiang's explanation made her feel somewhat stunned. Bone Maiden looked at Yili and for some reason she suddenly felt an irresistible magical power emanating from him. Then she reached out and took the zombie loyalty elixir without hesitation. Afterward she drank it in one gulp. Once the zombie loyalty elixir was consumed, the zombie would become 100% loyal. Don't worry, I will help you seek revenge, Yili said to Bone Maiden as he looked at her. Yes, master. After drinking the zombie loyalty elixir, Bone Maiden showed a complete transformation in her attitude. Chapter 277. The Great Devouring Technique. Ziqiang was somewhat stunned. Just a moment ago, this 6th-tier female zombie didn't act this way. How did she suddenly address Demon King as her master? However, she soon understood. It must be due to that strange elixir. The Demon King's methods were truly extraordinary. Yili took a look at Bone Maiden's tattered clothes and thought about getting her a new set. He opened the Points Mall where he now had an enormous number of points. After browsing the clothing section for a moment, he found a suitable outfit. Misty floral dress. Wearing it increases one's appearance value by +10. Price: 20,000 points. For Yili, 20,000 points were a trivial sum. He purchased the misty floral dress without hesitation. After fusing the misty floral dress with Bone Maiden, she instantly became exceptionally beautiful. Her long, flowing hair cascaded like a waterfall, her face was enchanting like a flower, and she, in the misty floral dress, looked like a fairy. As the saying goes, a fair maiden, a gentleman's ideal mate. If they were in China, Yili would definitely pursue Bone Maiden. Unfortunately, this was not China. Ziqiang was left dumbfounded. She rubbed her eyes as if she couldn't believe how beautiful Bone Maiden had become. She clearly remembered that Bone Maiden had been filthy and ragged just a moment ago, but now she looked like a goddess who had descended to the mortal world. She's too beautiful, Ziqiang exclaimed in shock as she looked at Bone Maiden. Yili secretly smiled. The misty floral dress, which he had bought for 20,000 points, naturally came with a +10 appearance boost. How could she not be beautiful? He checked the zombies in his system space. 1 3rd-tier male zombie, 1 5th-tier female zombie, and 1 1st-tier male and female zombie each. Now that Bone Maiden was a 6th-tier zombie, he should evolve her to the 7th tier. Yili used his heavenly spirit eye to check the surroundings and found that there were quite a few zombies nearby. He released his Apocalypse Legion to lure them over. After tens of minutes, the Apocalypse Legion had lured a large number of zombies. As the sun set, Yili finally synthesized a 5th-tier zombie. He synthesized it with the 5th-tier zombie in his system space, turning them into a 6th-tier zombie. Then he synthesized this 6th-tier female zombie with Bone Maiden, making her a 7th-tier zombie. After reaching the 7th tier, Bone Maiden's purple eyes turned red. Yili checked Bone Maiden's attributes. Bone Maiden, 6th-tier zombie. Attribute Speed. Zombie Skill, Devour. Ding! Congratulations to the host for gaining a random lottery opportunity. Would you like to use it? Yes. The virtual pointer rapidly spun in the roulette and stopped after a few seconds. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the exclusive zombie skill, the Great Devouring Technique. Great Devouring Technique, D-level skill, capable of devouring everything when upgraded to S-level. Yili thought that since Bone Maiden already had a devouring skill, this Great Devouring Technique should work better on her. Without much thought, Yili fused the Great Devouring Technique into Bone Maiden's body. By now it was getting late, and Yili and Ziqiang were heading towards the Sky Eagle base. However, when they were nearing the Sky Eagle base, they encountered a large group of fire-worshipping sect members. These people were all 3rd-tier evolved beings numbering in the hundreds. They made way as a seductive woman slowly approached. In her 30s wearing a red dress approached. Well, luck is on my side today. I've actually run into Zixian's daughter, the seductive woman said, looking at Ziqiang. Chapter 278, Do you know you're ugly? Ziqiang was taken aback. Fire-worshipping sect's guardian? The seductive woman smiled. I didn't expect Miss Ziqiang to know that I'm a guardian of the fire-worshipping sect. Apart from the seductive woman, there were hundreds of fierce genetic warriors surrounding Yili and Ziqiang. Miss Ziqiang, your Sky Eagle organization killed my fire-worshipping sect's junior master. Now that I've run into you, I must offer you to our master. The seductive woman smugly laughed, and her heavily made-up face was quite repulsive. Yili couldn't help but smile when he heard this. So, the fire-worshipping sect was pinning the blame on the Sky Eagle organization. Large forces like the fire-worshipping sect usually had the flame of life, and when the flame of life extinguished, it meant that the person was dead. The fire-worshipping sect had just captured hundreds of ordinary people from the Sky Eagle organization, so anyone would suspect that it was the Sky Eagle organization. Oh, there's also such a handsome little brother, the seductive woman said flirtatiously, looking at Yili. Yili smiled inwardly, wondering why there were so many stupid people in the world. The seductive woman was one of the fire-worshipping sect's guardians, a 7th-tier evolved being, and a formidable presence in the wilderness northern region. Young man, what's your name? The seductive woman seemed captivated by Yili's appearance, smiling charmingly as she continued. Do you know that you're ugly? Yili replied nonchalantly. This statement stunned not only the seductive woman but also the hundreds of fire-worshipping sect's genetic warriors. They were all taken aback. How dare you say I'm ugly? The seductive woman was in complete shock. It was as if she would rather believe that the sky was falling than accept that Yili had said such a thing. Don't you think you're ugly? Yili asked in return. You. The seductive woman, as one of the guardians of the fire-worshipping sect, had never been called ugly by anyone before. She was so angry that she couldn't even speak coherently. I want you dead. A moment later, the seductive woman screamed and rushed towards Yili. Her hands turned into claws, exuding a strong aura, similar to the 9-in white bone claws from martial arts novels. Yili shook his head slightly. Ants would always be ants, they never knew how high the sky and how vast the earth were. He slowly raised his finger, and golden spiritual light enveloped it as he pointed at the approaching seductive woman. Swish! A wind-breaking sound was heard. The seductive woman had originally thought that Yili was, at most, a low-level evolved being. However, she couldn't have imagined that Yili could unleash such a terrifying attack. She hurriedly dodged, narrowly avoiding Yili's attack. All the fire-worshipping sect's genetic warriors, numbering over 100, were terrified. They realized they couldn't withstand the attack Yili had just unleashed. It was too horrifying. You're actually this strong? The seductive woman looked at Yili in astonishment. She had originally thought that Yili was merely hiding his true level. Yili hadn't spoken yet, but Ziqiang was the first to respond. Of course, if the Demon King wanted to kill you, it would be as simple as crushing an ant. After returning from the Falling Stone Mountain range, Ziqiang had already come to the conclusion that Senior Demon King was invincible in battle. Chapter 279. Let me tell you a secret. The seductive woman was shocked. Demon King. In the wilderness northern region, there was only one person referred to as the Demon King, and that was Yi Li, who was neither human nor a member of the dark race. Yi Li's reputation in the wilderness northern region was unparalleled, and everyone knew of him. Are you Yi Li, the Demon King? The seductive woman asked in horror. With this statement, all the fire-worshipping sect's genetic warriors took a sharp intake of breath. Box novel. Calm Demon King Yi Li? It was said that he was neither human nor a member of the dark race. He commanded the Apocalypse Legion that was composed of 8th-tier zombies. The Fist God Zombie, the Ironfoot Zombie, the Frost Zombie, the Petrification Zombie, and the Ghost Sword Zombie. Of course, at that time Bone Maiden hadn't appeared yet. The Demon King himself was terrifying beyond comparison. He could fly high in the air, jump from tall buildings to flat ground and walk across rivers and seas. Yes, this is the esteemed Senior Demon King Yi Li. You dare to block the path of the Demon King? One see you don't want to live? Ziqiang jeered beside Yi Li. Upon hearing this, the seductive woman gritted her teeth, but after a few seconds she steadied herself. So what if you're the Demon King Yi Li? You're nothing in front of the fire-worshipping sect. The fire-worshipping sect was an absolute powerhouse in the wilderness northern region, and she didn't believe that Yi Li would dare to make a move against them. Unfortunately, the seductive woman couldn't fathom that the fire-worshipping sect's young master, Zhao Yang, wasn't killed by the Sky Eagle organization but by Yi Li himself. Yi Li. Yi Li suddenly chuckled, his laughter calm. Demon King, why are you laughing? Am I not correct? The seductive woman asked coldly. Yi Li shook his head slowly. No, you're absolutely right. Yi Li hadn't finished speaking, and the seductive woman had already started to smile triumphantly because she knew that even the Demon King Yi Li feared the fire-worshipping sect. However, the seductive woman couldn't have imagined that Yi Li hadn't finished speaking yet. Yi Li continued slowly, before one kill, I usually smile. What? With this statement, both the seductive woman and the hundreds of fire-worshipping sect's genetic warriors were shocked and terrified. They couldn't have imagined that Yi Li had smiled for this reason. Yi Li, do you really want to be an enemy of our fire-worshipping sect? The seductive woman said coldly. This place wasn't far from the Sky Eagle organization's base, but there was still a distance. Yi Li had already scanned the area with his heavenly spirit eyes. The fire-worshipping sect's leader was not nearby. Apart from the fire-worshipping sect's leader, no one else could make Yi Li feel the slightest bit of concern. After a few moments of contemplation, Yi Li looked at the seductive woman and said, Actually, I've always wanted to tell you a secret, but I felt a bit embarrassed. What secret? The seductive woman eagerly asked. Well, actually, I killed your fire-worshipping sect's young master, Yi Li said casually. In other words, if Yi Li could even kill the fire-worshipping sect's young master, what were they? With this statement, the seductive woman and the hundreds of fire-worshipping sect's genetic warriors were shocked to the core. You killed the young master? The seductive woman's eyes widened and she couldn't believe her ears. When she had first seen Yi Li, she thought he was extraordinarily handsome and charming. However, now Yi Li was like a devil in her eyes. Chapter 280. The approaching battle. The seductive woman and the hundreds of fire-worshipping sect genetic warriors watched Yi Li in terror. They couldn't believe that their young master was actually killed by the Demon King Yi Li. Someone like you, do you think one Yi Li would dare not to kill? Yi Li said indifferently, gazing at the seductive woman. As one of the fire-worshipping sect's guardians, a 7th-tier evolved being, the woman could swear that she had never been as afraid as she was today. Hearing Yi Li's words, the seductive woman's face, smeared with makeup, became even more terrified. She looked at Yi Li in horror and swallowed hard, saying, Box novel. Calm, Demon King Yi Li, even if you and your Apocalypse Legion are very powerful, we have so many people. Before the seductive woman could finish her sentence, Yi Li interrupted her. Why don't you understand? In my eyes, you are just pitiful ants, Yi Li said calmly. With those words, Yi Li released the Apocalypse Legion from his system space. 5 8th-tier zombies and 1 7th-tier zombie. When the fire-worshipping sect saw this lineup in front of them, they couldn't help but take 3 steps back, their souls trembling in fear. Is this the Apocalypse Legion? The seductive woman's voice trembled violently, and even her soul couldn't stop shaking. "Are you ready?" A playful expression appeared on Yi Li's handsome face. The seductive woman and the hundreds of fire-worshipping sex genetic warriors naturally understood what Yi Li meant, but they were so terrified that they couldn't speak. Ziqiang watched from Yi Li's side. She didn't know why, but when she saw how terrified the seductive woman and the fire-worshipping sex genetic warriors were, she felt a sense of delight. "Demon King Yi Li, you can't kill us. We are members of the fire-worshipping sect." The seductive woman's words were not finished yet, and she would never have the chance to finish them. Yi Li had already used the swift steps and appeared in front of the seductive woman, his finger already falling. The seventh-tier evolved being, the seductive woman, widened her eyes, unable to believe that she just died like this. The hundreds of fire-worshipping sex genetic warriors saw this scene and were so frightened that they felt their strength draining from their bodies, collapsing to the ground. "Kill them all," Yi Li ordered the Apocalypse Legion. With those words, Yi Li slowly walked forward. Ziqiang, who was still beside Yi Li, watched as he walked a few steps away before hurrying to catch up. At this moment, under the City of the Sky Eagle Organization's base, there were countless members of the fire-worshipping sect, and the number of genetic warriors was beyond count. These genetic warriors all wore black robes with 3 glaring characters embroidered on them: fire-worshipping sect. In the Sky Eagle Organization's base, numerous genetic warriors held specially made laser guns, and the battle was about to begin. In front of the fire-worshipping sect's genetic warriors, there were more than a dozen people. They were the fire-worshipping sect's leader, 2 elders, and 10 guardians. Of course, there were only 9 guardians now. On top of the city wall of the Sky Eagle Organization's base, Zishan stood with the core members of the Sky Eagle Organization, facing off against the fire-worshipping sect. These two sides were evenly matched in strength. Both the Sky Eagle Organization and the fire-worshipping sect were superpowers in the wilderness northern region, and their strengths were not far apart. If they were to go to war, it would undoubtedly shake the heavens and the earth. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.